Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Psyched Out. I'm not going to do the usual intro because you guys have been waiting like a million years for Bonnie and Clyde Part 2. Unfortunately, we had major technical difficulties last time, and we're both grown adults who have jobs, and she lives in California and I don't. So it's been crazy, but I managed to kidnap her again, so we're going to hit you with Part 2. I think we left off last time where we were talking about Bonnie's aunt and how she snitched on them, and that was really fucked up in my opinion, but whatever. We ball. I think you probably remember more than I do, so hit me with it.
Yeah, so I figured we could jump ahead a little bit in time. Bonnie and Clyde committed a lot of small robberies of gas stations and hardware stores and groceries, as well as lots of random small time kidnappings where they would drive people up the road a little bit, drop them off, and give them money to get back to town.
What the
So I
heck?
figured
That
we'd skip
doesn't
some of
make
the
any
smaller
sense.
stuff.
I'm gonna
They
kidnap
were
you?
very odd criminals. They were
What
very
the
odd
hell?
criminals in the sense that they liked the thrill of it, but they felt bad for doing it. So they would be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry we just kidnapped you. Here's some money. Go ahead and, hitch a
That's
ride
really
back to
funny.
town."
You get paid to be
So
kidnapped. Nice.
exactly. April 13th, 1933 was the Joplin, Missouri shootout. That's sort of the one of the biggest parts of their case. If you do any research on Bonnie and Clyde, you Google them and you look up photos, you'll see the iconic photo of Bonnie in her chevron striped dress with her foot up on the fender of the car smoking a cigar. You'll see the photo of Clyde crouched in front of a car with an array of guns around him and a rifle propped up on his knee. Those photos came from Joplin because what happened was the gangsters were ambushed and fled in a hurry and weren't able to take their Kodak camera with them. So when the police, went into their hideout after the fact, after the posse had cleared out, they took these, undeveloped film and they had it developed and then published it in the newspaper. So that's where all these iconic photos come from. And it's sort of what launched them to celebrity status. And it's what cemented Bonnie as sort of this like rough and tumble gun moll who's too cool for school and smokes cigars. And what's funny is a lot of people overlooked the fact that those photos were just them basically playing dress up. Like they were
Yeah.
highly glamorized and posed photos,
It's
and they were
almost
just
like
having a fun
cosplay
time.
nowadays. Like, oh, we're gonna go, like with you, like we're gonna go, to freaking Tombstone, Arizona or whatever. I'm gonna dress up. I'm gonna pose like this. Like to them, it was probably just for shits and giggles. So, I mean, at least we know humans have been humaning like that for a very long time.
Exactly, exactly. But at that point, Clyde's older brother Buck and his sister-in-law Blanche had accidentally joined the gang, and the way that that happened was Buck had been released from prison and wanted to meet up with Clyde, supposedly to talk him out of being a criminal. I really just think that was a BS excuse to like reconnect with Clyde. I don't think he ever was going to
I
try
want
and
some
actually
brother
talk him out of it.
time.
Yeah, so he and Blanche went to meet up with Bonnie and Clyde and W.D. Jones, who was still with them,
I forgot
in
about him.
Missouri, and they rented a little apartment over a garage in Joplin. And it's sort of an interesting layout. So there was like two little apartment rooms, and there was like a garage, but there wasn't parking in the garage for both cars because one of the garage spaces was rented by like the neighbors. So Buck
I
had to park his car like in the neighbor's driveway or something.
I
Very
don't know
odd.
why I always assumed
Um,
they only had one car, but I did.
No, they actually would sometimes steal multiple cars at a
Okay.
time and have like a little caravan of two cars. Part of it's because in movies, a lot of times they always just pile into one
Okay.
car, but you have to
I was
consider
like
the fact
firmly
that
convinced they were fitting everybody in a single car, and I don't know why I never thought that they probably had more than one.
they do. Part of it is they do that a lot in movies, I think, for simplicity, but you have to consider they had an arsenal of weaponry with them, as well as suitcases full of clothing and other
That's fair.
belongings. Like at one point, they had Clyde's guitar, which eventually I think the police or the FBI had seized hold of, and he wrote a very angry letter about wanting his guitar back.
Valid crash
Um,
out. Valid crash out.
so anyway, but in Joplin, it was a very intense shootout. A lot of gunfire was exchanged. There's reports that Bonnie fired back. That hasn't been confirmed. We don't know for sure that she did. What kind of became iconic about it, and is made fun of a lot in movies, but I don't blame her for it, is during the shootout, Blanche actually like scooped up her little dog that she had, her little white Maltese,
Hell
and
yeah,
just ran down the
Blanche.
street
Hell
screaming.
yeah,
Like she just
Blanche.
ran out the front door and was gone. And what's funny is it became kind of like a family joke. There's a get together that they had later that's recounted in Fugitives and Go Down Together where they would like sort of rib each other and tease each other. And Clyde would joke like, well, at least I didn't go screaming down the street.
Clyde, her
Like, I got taken
priorities
in
were
her Jeep.
correct here. Fuck everybody else. You get the dog. That's what I would do.
Well, what's interesting though, and this of all the facts of their case, this should not haunt me, but it kind of does. The dog got spooked and like jumped out of her arms and ran off. And to this day, nobody knows what happened to this dog.
No,
Nobody knows where this
baby.
dog went.
Oh.
Like, I like to think that someone took in this dog unknowingly, raising this little gangster doggy. But nobody knows where this
Dude.
dog ended up.
That's so sad. What's the do we know what the dog's name is?
Snowball.
Oh, baby. Okay, actually, all I could think of is Snowball the bunny from Secret Life of Pets, where it's voiced by Kevin Hart, and he's like, "We're gonna blow up the whole city."
I feel like if the dog did talk like that, they would have had less problems.
Yeah, probably, but I feel like it fits the vibe. But that's really sad. Like, ugh,
But
I'd be
yeah,
heartbroken.
So it was a very intense shootout. The police had brought, I'm putting air quotes around this as I say this, an armored car. Really, it was not that armored because a bullet went through the car and actually like pierced one of the officers'
Oh.
legs. So how armored was it really?
So, like, how did they figure out that they were staying here?
So they were acting a little suspicious because they would send Blanche to do all their errands, and when they had reserved this room, they had said that there was only, I want to say like only 4 of them or something. They had more people staying there than should have been staying there, and so they had said, "Oh, we only have this many people." But then every time she went out to buy food or did grocery shopping, they got food for multiple like.
What if
extra
she just
people.
likes to eat a lot? Fuck off, guys. Like, come on.
Right?
She's a girl with an
But
appetite,
yeah.
you bitches.
And when the grocery boy would drop off groceries, the women would come out to get it. They wouldn't let him up. Nobody would open the windows. They would actually like cover the windows with newspaper and stuff. So I mean, they were being too.
They weren't
secretive to the
subtle,
point where
yeah.
People are like, what is going on with that house? Plus, they would do this thing that gangsters were known to do, where when they would park their car, they would back into the garage for a quick getaway. And most people did not park their cars that way. So there was a lot of stuff. Then there was one time where supposedly some gunfire had gone off because Clyde was cleaning guns and one of them discharged.
Clyde,
so,
come on, bro. The
that-
rules of gun safety are that guns don't magically go off unless you're fucking with the trigger, dude. Come on. Ugh.
Anyway, so there were some things. And then during the shootout, everyone got away, in this instance, relatively okay. People were nicked and scraped up. And W.D. Jones, I believe, had been shot in the arm. But everyone ended up being okay. The interesting part to me is, I don't remember which biography this was in. It might have been Go Down Together. But they discussed that with Bonnie and Clyde, with the whole gang, because they were fleeing the law, they couldn't get medical treatment when they were injured. So
I
they
never
would have
thought
to do a
about
lot
that.
of home remedies. Yeah, they were really pretty beat up by
Yeah.
the end of their 2-year crime stint. But they describe how the way they treated this injury that WD had was they wanted to see if the bullet was still in his shoulder. So what they did is they drove somewhere out in the country. Clyde took this little stick and like stripped it down.
I think I know where this
And
is
they
going.
took the stick and they poked it through the hole.
Oh, no.
And when it came out the other side, they determined that since it hadn't hit a bullet, then the bullet had already passed through.
I don't know if that's how that
And then they would
works.
They would just buy like hydrogen peroxide and stuff like that, or rubbing alcohol, and they would just pour that into the wound to clean it.
God,
And so they would just pour that in there. And
I
just give him
hate
some
everything
Tylenol
about
and-
that. They like gave him
Yeah.
splinters on the inside. Ugh.
Yeah, no, it's horrible.
Oh, that sucks so bad.
So, anyway, but to me the two most relevant and important things that came out of the Joplin shootout was the discovery of the photos, and also at that point, I don't believe that Blanche and Buck, at first they didn't know who they were. But what happened was when they left, they had left behind their marriage license and some information about Buck, being released from prison. So at that point, they knew that they were now involved and they were guilty by association.
Yeah.
So at this point, they were part of the gang, whether they wanted to be or not, which really bothered Blanche because she truly, I feel like, was young and naive and had thought that they really were just going to go like meet up
Right.
with Bonnie and Clyde for a little staycation, and she didn't know that this was how it was going to turn out. So anyway, those were probably the two most important things to come out of that shootout. And then if we jump ahead a little bit to June, Bonnie and Clyde and W.D. Jones had split off briefly from Blanche and Buck because I believe Blanche and Buck had gone to visit her father.
Okay.
And they were going to like reconvene somewhere in Texas. And what ended up happening was Clyde was driving too fast on a country road at night.
Dude,
And
it's
it was
always
this
a
little
traffic
road-
stop.
Always. Well, what happened was there was a detour but the signage was not super visible at night, and it was a very flat area in Texas where everything looks the same, everything's dark. Obviously, there were no streetlights.
Yeah.
Everything was a dirt road back then, and he missed the detour, and it was for like a bridge that they were constructing. So what happened was when he missed this detour, the car went over this embankment essentially where they were, building this bridge. So he went over the embankment, the car flipped and landed on its side at the bottom of like a dry riverbed. And there was a family nearby on this little farm, at a little farmhouse, that one of the men had remarked, like, oh, that's not going to be good. That car's driving way too fast. And right after they heard the big bang. And so they came outside to see what had happened. And they described that when they got to this little dry riverbed, there was two men, and they thought it was a kid in the car. They thought Bonnie was a little kid because she was so tiny. And they
She's
helped
just a
pull
little guy.
Clyde out of the car. And I can't remember if W.D. Jones climbed out on his own. He was in the back seat, or if they helped pull him out. And then one of the men had yelled, there's a kid in here, because Bonnie had been kind of thrown from her seat, and she was sort of curled up in the bottom of the car. And in most film adaptations, they don't describe it this way or show it this way. And so it's sort of like, if in my case, because I'm writing a fictional novel, I have to reimagine and sort of pick and choose how I write it. In most adaptations, the car is shown hitting the front, the front end of the car crumples, it hits the bottom of the riverbed. But in all of the witness reports, it's described as being on its side, and all the windows have been broken out. So anyway, so she's crumpled up on the bottom, and they end up getting her out. At this point, she was pretty much passed out, because one of the man that picked her up, described that she was very hard to carry, because she was like,
dude,
so limp
dead
and,
weight.
like,
If
limber
you've
and
ever
hard
had to
hold.
lift dead weight, it's way harder than you think.
Yeah. But her leg was very badly burned, and in some adaptations they describe that the car was on fire. The witness report never says the car was on fire. It says that battery acid had eaten away at her leg because of where she had been sitting in the car.
God.
So anyway, they carry her inside to this little farmhouse, and the women lay her out on the bed, and they poured baking powder on her leg, because that was like a country home remedy to stop the acid from eating away.
Yeah.
Because she also had some mild burns, kind of like on her hands and a little bit on her face.
I mean,
But
isn't
her
baking
leg was
powder
the
like
most
a
major.
base, so it would cancel it out, I would think?
Yeah, basically it stops it from doing any more damage.
Or I guess
So
it's
they lay her
it
out
could
on the
absorb
bed
it
and-
too, so I guess that makes sense.
Exactly. And what's interesting is there's a lot of conflicting reports about how W.D. Jones and Clyde acted during and after the crash. The witnesses said that they did not care about Bonnie at all. They were focused only on getting the guns out of the car and like making sure that, the police weren't called. But some reports say that, that's highly unlikely considering how close Bonnie and Clyde were, that he wouldn't be concerned about her. So anyway, do with that what you will. There's conflicting reports. One of the eyewitnesses said that one of the women had told Clyde, oh, she's, in a very bad way. She needs a doctor. She's going to die. And Clyde had said, well, I guess she's just going to have to die then. But a lot of historians say that it's probably not likely that he said that. And if he did, he probably wasn't thinking straight, because the witnesses described that he had some blood in his hairline. I mean, he was pretty beat up
Well,
too.
adrenaline's like nuts, so Lord knows
Yeah.
what he was feeling, and his senses were probably heightened, and like you're not really thinking about what you're saying in that moment. You're just like, well, this is a shit situation.
Exactly.
Like literally, we're taking a bite out of a shit sandwich right now.
Exactly. So what ended up happening was there was a miscommunication where W.D. Jones ended up firing off a round and shot one of the women in the hand.
Oh,
and
God.
She ended up recovering. There were some reports saying that she lost fingers, and as far as we know, that's not true. It just sort of nicked her hand, and I'm sure it hurt very badly. But the reason it happened was because she had gone towards the door to try and like close it, because she realized the back door was open a little bit, and she had a little baby crawling around, and she was afraid the baby would get out.
Yeah.
So she went to reach for the door, and W.D. Jones thought she was going to slip out the back and go call the police. So he fired at the door and hit her hand.
WD, what are we
doing,
doing, bro? What are we doing?
Yeah, so it erupted into chaos, and Bonnie actually hopped off the bed and grabbed a gun. And so she's standing there, covered in baking powder and like limping.
Damn, what a girl boss.
badass.
She's
I'm
like,
sorry,
I
like,
may
she
be
is.
a cripple now, but fuck it. Clicks the shotgun. It's like, we're balling now, dude.
Exactly. So they ended up essentially escaping, sidling out the door. They stole someone's car. I don't remember if the farmhouse, if they had a car or if it was someone else's car.
Oh, that's
I probably
kind of
can't remember.
shitty, though, because they, like, high-key helped you, and you're going to steal their car now? Like, that's fucked up. Oh, I don't agree with that.
anyway.
That's shitty, dude.
So they ended up, escaping, and they were okay. But afterwards, what happened is they ended up going to stay at like I believe it was a motor court. I don't think it was like a campground. But Clyde ended up driving back to Texas to get Bonnie's sister Billy to come help nurse Bonnie because she was in a really bad way.
Yeah.
And they actually, at one point, what Clyde did was he stole a car from a hospital parking lot, and it had a doctor had left his medical bag in there.
Brother.
And so he stole the bag that had all of the bandages.
That's kind of
and
smart, though. I'm
like
not
the
going to
morphine
lie.
and
That's kind
exactly.
of
And so
smart.
they were
Like, if you're
using that
gonna steal a car, like, that's the one to pick. So I can't really blame him for that one.
exactly. So, and this is why a lot of historians think that he didn't make the comment about, oh, she's just gonna have to die, because after she was injured, he never left her side. I mean,
Like, he very
constantly at
clearly
her side
cared.
holding her
Yeah,
hand.
for sure.
Yeah, and to the point where like he wasn't really eating or sleeping, and
Oh.
Blanche and Buck would step in and help, but he didn't like to leave her alone with them. Probably because Blanche and Bonnie tended to have drama.
Yeah.
But he was really worried too that she would get dependent on pain medication because she was in so much pain.
Oh.
So
Huh.
he started trying to like wean her off some of the
Right.
medication she was taking. But then he did say later that like because she did become essentially a borderline alcoholic and did struggle a little bit with some addiction. And he said that she was in so much pain all the time that he just couldn't deny her anything
Right.
because he knew how hard it was for her. But yeah, and then Billy did stay with them, and there's some rumors that she had a bit of a romance with WD. Obviously
Nice.
it didn't last.
That's funny.
But yeah, and Clyde was very particular about her not participating in any robberies.
Okay. Well,
And
that's good. At
then
least he's
once
got
he felt-
standards.
Well, at least once he felt that Bonnie was able to travel again, he dropped Billy off at the, train station or whatever and sent her back home, but he bought her a dress first. He said,
Oh,
"Thanks for helping
Clyde,
me
every
with
time
that."
you do something questionable, I'm like, wait a second. Is he really that bad of a guy? Like, legally, yes. However, he
he's
does
one
some
of my-
things where you're like, I kind of
People are
rock
gonna
with this
be-
guy.
People are going to be mad at me for saying this. He is one of my favorite people in history to study because he is such a walking contradiction.
Dude,
When
he's
you look
so
at all the actions
nuanced.
he took, so nuanced. I mean, so many horrible, bloodthirsty things that he does where you're like, this man is evil.
Yeah.
And then he'll do something like, he's holding Bonnie's hand and nursing her back to health and carrying her to the bathroom because she can't walk and buying Billy a dress and, and teasing Blanche about, running down the street in
Right.
little boots. And
Well,
then you're like, he's not so bad.
It's interesting because it shows, like, the human side. Like, even in my job, in my line of work, it's like, I tell people all the time, even if I have to take them to jail, like, I don't think you're a bad person. I just think you've made bad choices tonight. And, like, it's kind of a similar thing with Clyde. Like, I don't think he's inherently a bad, evil guy. I think he just made some bad choices. Like, same with Bonnie. So I don't know. I peruse your TikTok from time to time, as you may have noticed, and it just bothers me when people are like, oh, it's black and white. Like, this person's a shitbag. Like, sometimes, yeah, if we're talking about Ted Bundy, yeah, that guy's a fucking shitbag, but we're not. So, like, maybe have a little bit of nuance and compassion and empathy and, like, hey, he's a human being. Do I agree with the bad stuff that he did? No. Objectively, do I understand it? Yes. Do I also understand that, like, he has priorities to his family and he cares about certain people? Yes. Like, it.
Exactly.
Anyways.
Exactly. So following this crash, what ended up happening was because they weren't able to seek, actual medical care for Bonnie, what ended up happening was her leg essentially atrophied. Her muscles didn't heal properly.
Oh.
So she wasn't able to fully straighten her leg from
Did
then on. It
the
sort of
acid go
curled
down
up
to,
on her.
like, the bone? Or, like.
Yeah,
Okay.
W.D. Jones, he had an unpublished, or maybe it was published, I can't remember, like a Playboy magazine interview where he discussed, like, which is funny to me, but he discussed his life with Bonnie
It's
and
such a
Clyde.
young boy thing to do.
Exactly, but he describes how the acid had sort of eaten away to the bone. Like there were parts where you could see the bone in Bonnie's leg, and that it was really really as bad as everyone had said. And so because it never really healed properly, she couldn't bear pressure or weight on that leg. And so from then on, when she walked, she would hop or drag that leg. And so a lot of times to be able to move more quickly, Clyde would just carry her.
I just
or,
think
like,
of
if they
Finnick and
stopped
Mags,
somewhere-
dude. Like
Yeah.
Finnick and
Or
Mags
if they
just.
stopped somewhere. if they stopped somewhere for like a picnic or to eat or something, he would like lay a blanket out on the ground and then he'd pick her up and sit her down. And
Oh.
so yeah, so she couldn't really walk properly, and there's some reports about how he'd have to like carry her to the bathroom and stuff. But what's interesting is after the Wellington crash, the police in Texas actually knocked on Bonnie's mother's door, and I believe she found out Bonnie was injured through the papers. Nobody had told her.
Oh, that
And
sucks.
they said, well, they told her, they said, Bonnie, your daughter's gonna die. If she doesn't die from her injuries, Clyde is gonna kill her and leave her behind.
What the hell?
Because she's a liability now, and he's heartless. He's not gonna stay with her. And then it's funny because it points
That's
out
such
and
a
go down together
wild
just
thing to
the
just
duality.
assume.
Well, the duality of the fact that the police are standing on Emma Parker's doorstep telling her this. Meanwhile, Clyde is literally at Bonnie's bedside holding her hand, nursing her back to health, not sleeping, not eating, So it's just sort of an interesting dichotomy. But then probably the next big event following that was the following month in July was the Red Crown shootout in Platte City, Missouri. And that is sort of where it all really went to shit. So at that point, it was still Bonnie, Clyde, Blanche Buck, and W.D. Jones. And that was right across the street from this restaurant. But unbeknownst to them, this restaurant was like a place where officers would gather to discuss like the day's events and sort of debrief and everything. And they didn't know this. And this was another instance where Blanche was really their errand girl, but it got them in trouble because she would like go to this restaurant to get them food, and only 4 people had said they were staying there, but then she'd buy food for more than 4 people. And
That doesn't mean shit, guys. Stand on business, Blanche.
It's so funny the amount of times that this is used as a way to say they're criminals because they.
She got 3 orders of pancakes instead of 2.
Plate of food, like what? They're like, she's a criminal. But what's funny is, and part of it was like when they drove in to park at this place, they like made it seem as if it was so funny because Clyde just loved to mess with Blanche, like classic, I feel like brother and sister-in-law antics. You know? And he was like, "This is my wife," and meanwhile Buck's like in the backseat under a blanket. But anyway, and they're like having to hide people so that it looks like there's less of them than there actually is. So anyway, but it went to shit really quick because they were doing a lot of things that attracted attention, just sort of acting skittish, and the police kind of knew at that point that Bonnie and Clyde were probably in the area, so they just sort of assumed. So it kind of sucks because they were going to leave like a night early, but part of it was Bonnie and Clyde were just so tired of being on the run. To have an actual bed was such a luxury that Clyde was like, "No, let's stay another night. We'll leave tomorrow." And because he made that decision, then they were ambushed that night. If they had left, it wouldn't have happened. But part of it, too, is Jeff Gwynne says in Go Down Together that it was an inn that had... sorry, my cat is attacking me.
It's okay. Riptide's been barking this whole fucking time, so it's fine. Listen, people. Listen, people. I apologize. She's cut out a few times because the internet's rough. I'll edit it out in post. Don't worry about it. But... this may not be the most high quality content, but we really just wanted to get it to you guys because otherwise, like, it's not going to happen. So bear with us. I apologize. Also, I can't control the dog. She can't control her cat. Cat's going to do what cat does. Dog's going to do what dog does. So I apologize. Bear with us. Anyways, now that my public service announcement is over, carry on.
Yeah. Well, because it was, it was brick walls. Supposedly, Clyde felt a little more secure and more safe in that area. Which I think is also kind of an interesting testament to, like, the way his brain works and stuff like that. Because he's like, oh, we have 4 brick walls. We're good. But anyway, they were not, in fact, good. And in the ambush, what ended up happening was the police had knocked on Blanche's door. It was sort of a split housing thing where you had, like, 2 different, like, apartments. And they had knocked on Blanche's door, and she had kind of yelled out to sort of give, like, a code word to Bonnie and Clyde. And, she was like, the men are next door.
The men.
So then, obviously Clyde, who always slept very lightly, he never slept well, which makes sense when you consider all his time in prison.
I mean, you kind of can't do that in prison.
My cat is trying to kill me. Stop. So then he, woke up. They immediately, punched out the windows and start firing at the officers. And it's just, like, mass chaos.
So did the officers have it, like, surrounded? Like, do we know what their tactics were?
Yeah, they had tried to block and I don't know if I mentioned this for Joplin. They sort of did the same thing in Joplin. It just didn't work well. Is they tried to block the driveway in the garage with like an armored car.
Makes sense.
In this instance, the armored car. To this day, nobody knows why he did this or what exactly happened.
No.
The armored car, I think, got a little scared, and he just kind of like reversed. So like once they got the garage open and were trying to get away, the armored car was like, actually, I don't want to be
Okay, well,
out of the way.
I understand why. So basically, there's like a thing with law enforcement where it's like you do not want to be in the vehicle, especially if somebody is like armed and they're shooting at you, because it's literally just a giant metal coffin. So I'm confused as to why they had somebody in the freaking car instead of just parking it and having him get out. Like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. Like, just sit there, dude. Hey, you know what? If they try to get away, they're either going to shoot you or ram your car, and you're just supposed to park that shit, bro. Get out. Like, what are we doing? Oh, God.
So he was like, I am out of here. So anyway, they managed to get down, into the car. But when you think about it, it was a very narrow escape, because the other thing that's interesting is Bonnie and Clyde's apartment, there was an inside door that opened into the garage. So they had direct access to the garage. Blanche and Buck's apartment, they did not.
Oh.
They had to go outside through the front door and then get into the garage that way. And of course, there's gunfire everywhere. So they managed to get out. And also, remember, Bonnie's injured at this point. She can't walk.
Right.
WD and Clyde are trying to drag her into the car. And I'm going to move my cat. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
She's jumping up.
Is it Monet or Marie that's being a little shit?
It's Monet, because anytime I sit in the seat, she decides she wants to be in the seat.
You should get like a little squirt bottle and just pss, pss, pss.
I need to. I think it'd be great. So anyway, to restate what I was just saying. What ended up happening was, WD and Clyde were able to drag Bonnie into the car. Clyde wanted WD to open the garage, because it was like one of those garages that chain.
Yeah,
he was too scared to do it, because keep in mind, this kid is 16.
Right.
So
that'd be like Eli or
going to get
John,
shot.
like trying to make this shit work.
Exactly. So Clyde's helping him. They get the garage open. They get the car out. And Blanche and Buck run around from the front to get in. And while they're doing that, Buck is shot.
Oh.
And he's shot in the head.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Does he die? Is this how he gets murdered?
We shall see. And
wait a second.
I always hate how when you see any adaptation of Blanche's story, they paint her as a coward. She screams, she cries, she doesn't help with anything ever.
Dude, can I blame her? No.
But what she does now, to me, is one of the most insane parts of her story. So she's very tiny. She hooks her arm around Buck, hauls him to his feet. She's dragging him.
Get it, girl.
There's gunfire erupting everywhere. This woman is terrified of guns. She never carried a gun. She hated them.
Honestly, valid.
Obviously, she's terrified. So she's dragging Buck along. Clyde manages to get around to her and help, and they manage to push Buck into the back seat, and Blanche climbs in with him. And then I believe Bonnie was in the front seat. She was still in her nightgown.
Oh,
and
bummer.
WD climbed in as well. And what ended up happening was Blanche literally threw herself over Buck in the back seat.
Damn.
Remember, he'd been shot through the head. He's kind of unresponsive.
That's a ride or die right
so
there.
She's shielding his body with her body. And what ended up happening was, as they're driving away, an officer had shot and the back window exploded. And she got glass shards in her eyes.
Ooh, oh no.
So she's screaming.
Oh, no.
She's screaming. And, I believe at this point, WD had been shot. Clyde had been nicked by a bullet. Buck's bleeding now. Blanche has glass in her eyes. Bonnie's already, crippled and unable to really help with anything.
Good Lord.
So they managed to escape. They're bleeding everywhere. At some point, I believe W.D. Jones got out and stole a car, if I remember correctly. And then they took these two cars to Dexfield, which was essentially like a giant park. I think at one point it had been like a fairground and it had been abandoned, and now it was just a place where people would camp out. So they managed to get to Dexfield, and this is like, just kind of an open rural area. And so they start trying to tend to each other's wounds, and again, very primitive methods. And this part always gives me the heebie-jeebies. They basically lay Buck out, and at this point he's talking.
Are they gonna do the stick thing again and like lobotomize him?
No,
okay.
No, not quite, but I feel like it's just as bad.
Okay.
So he's sort of talking, but kind of not making sense and babbling, he'd been shot in the head. And so they end up laying him out, and then Clyde takes like rubbing alcohol and pours it into the wound in his head. to try and clean the wound because that's all they knew to do.
Dude, are you like
watching
pouring
these
rubbing
patients
alcohol into his brain? What is happening?
Yeah, so he really did. His brain was exposed. They
Oh,
just poured
I can imagine what
rubbing
that would feel
alcohol
like.
into his brain.
Oh, that's gotta feel
Yeah.
so weird. Oh, I don't like
But I
that.
also think Buck was so out of it. That
Well,
honestly,
yeah,
he
but
probably
like,
had no
still,
clue what was
dude.
going on.
Oh,
But yeah, and then they had a pair of sunglasses that they put on Blanche. They tried to pluck the glass out of her eyes, and some of it they couldn't pluck out
so why did they think the sunglasses were gonna help?
because the light was hurting her eyes.
Okay.
And they were like, we can't really get the glass out, but we can just kind of shield your eyes from the sun.
Okay.
So anyway, so they ended up staying in Dexfield for, I think it ended up being about 3 days.
So was the
And in
goal
that
of the
time, they would
officers? Sorry, I have a question. Was the officer, were they just told like shoot into the fucking house and hope you hit the right people? Like what was the
Essentially, because they knew that the only people lodging there were either gang members or associated with the Barrow Gang, and at that point they were so desperate to catch them. They
so
kinda
it
didn't
was
care who
just
they killed,
basically
was
like
my opinion.
that's fucked
And
up.
there were officers killed at the shootout. I can't remember the names of the officers, but Buck said, I killed someone. He was like, one of those people, like, I killed. And they don't know who killed the other officer, whether it was WD or Clyde or if it was Buck. But anyway,
God, they're so
They
dumb.
stayed for like 3 days in Dexfield, and Bonnie and Clyde went into town a couple of times, or into a nearby town to get like medical supplies and get food and bring it back, which is kind of interesting because their car was covered in bullet holes. Clyde literally had to take mud and fill in the bullet holes on the car with mud.
You know what? We
which is interesting.
appreciate
I'm like,
the
how did
ingenuity.
nobody realize?
We appreciate the. He's like,
Yeah,
oh,
they
it's
did
just
end up, I
my
think,
new. It's my new paint job. Don't worry about it. Like I got some body work done.
Exactly. And I think they ended up stealing another car that was obviously less conspicuous. But then what ended up happening is early the morning of the 24th, W.D. Jones was awake. He was roasting hot dogs over a fire for breakfast.
Iconic.
Which is just kind of
That's like such a 16-year-old breakfast.
And the officers, yes. Well, officers had realized that they were in the area because a boy and his father were out hunting and had found bloody bandages, and someone had tried to burn like a seat from a car.
Oh.
And they were like, "This is odd. Who would
Yeah,
do this?"
that's suspicious.
And then they remembered the shootout at the inn. So they had notified police. So the police sort of knew that that's what was, that they were out there, and they rallied. And this kind of makes sense to me and kind of doesn't. They sort of rallied the whole town like a Beauty and the Beast style, like let's go kill the beast sort of thing.
That's dumb. Let's get innocent civilians involved in this when we know these people are going to shoot back and have already killed cops. The logic here is just baffling from all points of view. I don't get it.
They ended up, one of the officers recounted after the fact that some of the people, because again, they all met at the restaurant where they all would hang out. And so one of the officers after the fact remembers that some of the young men got so drunk beforehand that he actually took their guns away because he was like, you were going to kill us.
Jesus Christ.
No, you can't be involved. So anyway, they surround this campsite, and essentially from what I remember is someone had stepped on a stick. And again, Clyde is a super light sleeper. He woke up and immediately
Dude, that's like a
knew.
scene from a movie.
He had sort of this bizarre... It is. People say he had a sixth sense because he could just sense danger. Like, it's insane. He could just know. So anyway, so he woke up and immediately they were like, we got to get out of here, get everyone who was sleeping outside the car back in the car and drive away. But what ended up happening is they blew out what happened was they tried to get the car, like they got in the car, but then as they were trying to, flip a U-turn and get out, they ran over like a tree stump or a tree log and got stuck and couldn't get out. And they had two cars with them, remember?
I shouldn't laugh,
to run
but...
to the other car. I mean, it is kind of comical how insanely bad their luck is. And they got out of the car to try and get into the other car, but the officers had blown out the tires. So at this point, they were stuck. They didn't have any options.
Yeah.
So I guess that Clyde had wanted to stay with Buck, and I believe it was Buck who yelled at him to go. And so I get annoyed when people say, oh, he's a coward who left his brother to die, because he wanted to stay with Buck and Buck told him, you need to go.
And Buck's the older one,
Blanche
right?
stayed with Buck because he couldn't walk anymore. What was that?
I said Buck's older than Clyde, correct, if I remember?
Buck is older than
Okay,
Clyde. Yeah,
so
he's
it's
his older
also
brother.
like Buck
Brother.
looking out for his little brother of like, just leave me behind, dude. Like, I don't
Yeah.
want you to get killed here because you can't
Yeah.
take care of
He
me.
knew. He knew he was dying. Yeah. But Blanche wouldn't leave him, so Blanche stayed with Buck, and then Bonnie and WD and Clyde managed to like sneak off into the brush. And then some officers sort of followed them, and I feel like this is done really well in the 1967 movie, where you see them firing. The officers fired down into this little creek bed that they crossed. Um, but for some reason, I think because of the brush, they couldn't really see them well,
Mm.
so they didn't, obviously kill them. So they managed to like get across, and then W.D. Jones and Bonnie sort of hid out in the brush, like in these brambles. They sort of just laid there. And Bonnie recounted after the fact that she was pretty sure this was the end and they were going to die. And what's interesting, too, is her leg was still in the process of healing.
Right.
Because it was just constantly, with all the gun battles and stuff, it could just never heal properly. So as they're crawling through the brambles, her leg is catching on all of these thorns.
Ugh.
So all of her scabs and everything, all of her burns are just tearing open.
Oh.
And she's bleeding everywhere.
How did she not
And she
get
was
like a
already wounded
raging
from other
infection?
gun battles and things. I honestly think she might have at some point.
Because
It's
I'm
just
like,
not
how
documented well
how did
because
she
it was-
not die from like sepsis or some shit?
Probably because Clyde be pouring rubbing alcohol on everything. In existence. Like, let me pour some rubbing
Your
alcohol
legs
on
burned?
that.
Alcohol. You have a brain injury? Alcohol. Your tummy hurts?
Alcohol.
Alcohol.
Alcohol. No, for real.
You
It was
stubbed
just
your
answer to
toe?
everything.
Alcohol.
I mean, he's a country boy, so it tracks. Um, but anyway, so her and WD are laying out in the brambles, and there's a report of that Bonnie had told her family after the fact, and again, and I think this one was from fugitives. He basically had said like, we're gonna die, and WD always called her sis, and he basically was like, no, like we're okay, sis, we're gonna be okay, and like it's just kind of just this interesting thing to me that here you have this 16-year-old boy who at this point in his life is now a murderer, and he's this older woman, that he looks at as a little sister. He's telling her like, it's okay, sis, we're gonna be all right. And here's this boy who's frightened for his life. He's only 16, but he's a murderer. It's just this weird dichotomy that's baffling. So anyway, Clyde managed to, and this is insane to me, managed to escape, stole a car, came back, and also he'd been shot through the arm, so he couldn't even use one of his arms.
Hopefully it was the one that was not his dominant one.
Apparently, yeah. So he manages to get back, and there's this story, and again, it might be glamorized, but it's one of my favorite Bonnie and Clyde stories, is he crawls through these brambles to get to Bonnie, on one arm, mind you, because his other arm is shot to ribbons, and he gets to her, and he cradles her head, and he kisses her,
Ooh.
and then he manages to, like, heft her over
He's
his
got that
shoulder
country boy
and
strength.
carry her out. And I just think that's insane. He really does. So they managed to escape, and then while this is going on, they managed to tear out of there.
Did they
badly
get
wounded.
JW
Blanche and Buck had been cornered. and
WD?
WD
Okay,
Jones
good.
was with them.
I was
yeah.
worried about
So
him.
He was the least injured, so he actually ended up driving. You're like, my baby. No, he ended up driving the car because, Clyde only had one good arm at that point.
They were like,
So,
here's the
anyway,
keys,
so they
bitch.
escaped, and then, drive the car. And Blanche and Buck at this point are cornered. And Blanche was trying to haul Buck up to his feet so they could, put their hands up and surrender. But the law just kept shooting at him. So they shot him through the back like a bunch of times. And she shouted out, he's dead, you've killed him, stop.
Look, I'm sorry,
so-
but I hate these fucking cops, dude. What the hell? I don't... These people should not be employed. I know they're probably dead now, but like, what the fuck, dude? Jesus Christ.
Part of it, for context back then, there was no police academy or anything. Most of these people were just random country bumpkins that needed a job, and being a police officer paid better than some. But
Good
even
Lord.
then, most of them were only paid based on the amount of people that they arrested.
Well, and they were
And
probably
weren't
like,
paid
oh, I
well.
can't wait to shoot somebody. Like, get the fuck out of here, bro.
So yeah, so she had said, you killed him, stop shooting. So they haul her to her feet. There's some really iconic photos. I encourage you to look because they're very almost like Renaissance photos. It's insane. So she's in her little riding pants, which are always hysterical because everyone teased her for them. They're literally horse riding pants, but
She's a
she
horse
looks
girl,
stylish, what can I
confirmed.
say? She got on her boots. She's got on her boots. She's got on her little white shirt, and her sunglasses, and they haul her to her feet. And in the photo, you can see Buck kind of on the ground. There's officers bent over him. She's screaming because she doesn't want to be taken away from him. They cuff her, and what's interesting is she had horrible vision because of the glass in her eyes.
Right.
A police officer had raised a camera to take a photo of the seed, and all she saw was the shine. She didn't know what it was. So in the photo, she's screaming because she thought that they were going to shoot her.
I mean,
Like,
at
that
this
she was going
point,
to be
anything's
summarily
possible. It's
executed.
not like they gave a shit.
Exactly. So it's a very iconic photo of her. And what's interesting too in that photo, she looks really sickly thin, and it's because she lost like 35 pounds in just a couple of months.
Stress
from
will
the
do
stress
that
and
to you.
anxiety. Yeah. So anyway, so she ended up. They arrested her. Buck was taken to the hospital. They had armed guards all around the hospital because they were convinced that Clyde was going to come bust his brother out of the hospital, which makes no sense to me and shows how they were not thinking at all. Because first of all, they knew Clyde was injured. Second of all, he never went to hospitals. And third of all, even if he got in, what is he going to do with his brother that's dead?
Clyde doesn't need a hospital. He uses alcohol for everything. We've learned this. He's not going to go there. He is the hospital, dude.
Exactly. So, Buck did end up passing away
Aw.
from his injuries. The last interaction he had with Blanche was they were taken to, I want to say it was the hospital, and I can't remember exactly, but for some reason, like, he was laid out on the floor or something on, like, a padded mat or something, and she was sitting beside him, and he wanted a cigarette, so she lit a cigarette, and she gave it to him, and that was the last interaction that they had, and then he was taken in for surgery, and she was taken to, be processed, fingerprinted, all of that.
Yeah.
So she was not at his bedside when he died, but what's interesting is by the end, because I believe he had pneumonia and stuff, like, that had crept into his lungs from the bullets, and then, I don't know if it was his brain injury or if it was the injuries to his lungs and chest that
Probably
ended up killing him.
compounding
But by the end-
issues.
Yeah, by the end he was delirious. He didn't know where he was anymore.
That's
And,
scary.
His family, his mother, and I believe his brother, Elsie, and then Bonnie's sister had all shown up, and he thought that Bonnie's sister was Blanche, and he kept holding her hand, and he kept begging her not to leave him.
Oh, that's so
You know,
sad.
don't leave me, honey. Don't leave me. And
Did she
nobody
go
wanted
along
to be
with
the one to
it?
tell him that,
Okay,
nobody
good.
wanted to tell him it wasn't Blanche, that she
Okay.
wasn't there. But that's just gutting to me.
That's so sad, dude. That's love right
It's
there.
very sad. So anyway, so he ended up passing away, and then his family had bought a headstone for him. But what's interesting is they held off buying a headstone because they wanted to buy. This is so tragic. They were terribly poor, so they wanted to buy a joint headstone for Clyde and Buck because they couldn't afford two.
Aw.
And they knew that Clyde was going to die, even if he didn't die then. So
Brother.
and what's interesting is the next time they met up with their family, they talked to Clyde about it. They said, "We want to buy a joint headstone for you and for Buck because we want you buried together." And what's interesting is, like, you would assume that would really set someone off and make them really troubled. And he looked at them and he said, "I think that's, a good idea. Like, save your money."
Clyde, Jesus Christ, dude. What the fuck are we doing?
But what's funny is he and Bonnie had a very odd sense of, like, death did not seem to scare them. Like, they knew it was inevitable. And so when people bring it up, they had, like, almost this odd sense of, like, calmness about it.
I mean,
where
at
they were
a
just
certain
like, yeah.
point, you have to accept it with the lifestyle that you're living, especially back then. Now it's a little bit different. But, like, if they're just shooting into buildings because they want to kill you, like, clearly they don't have moral issues or obligations to give a shit about anybody else, especially when they were trying to recruit just average citizens to help them go hunt down people that have murdered cops. Like, obviously there's only one solution to this problem, air quotes, and that's that
Exactly.
they
It
have
doesn't
to
make a lot
die.
of sense.
Yeah.
So the next sort of big event that gets overlooked in pretty much every adaptation is the Sowers ambush, which happened November 21st, 1933.
Did it go
And
sour?
What happened was, it's spelled Sowers.
Oh,
Sour.
well, never mind then.
But what happened was, Clyde and Bonnie visited Texas because it was Kumi Barrow, Clyde's mother's birthday.
Aw.
And Clyde loved his mama, and so it was like, he wanted to visit her for
Mama's
her birthday.
boy.
So they met up, and then they would never meet in the same place twice. But for some reason, this time Clyde decided, okay, we're going to meet in the same place tomorrow, just to make it easy. Somebody, and we still don't know who, somebody in the family ratted them out and gave their location to police.
What
Some
the
historians
fuck?
suspect that it was his little sister. Some people think it was his little sister Marie's boyfriend. Eventually, they got divorced
What
because I
a
think Marie always
bitch!
suspected it was.
Get the fuck
Yeah,
up out of
because
here,
they
little Jim Bob or whatever your name is. Rude ass motherfucker. He's here to celebrate a
honestly, he did
birthday.
have a weird name.
You can't just
Yeah.
let it slide for the day, bitch.
Well, so what's funny is he and Marie ended up getting married, but Marie eventually divorced him, and part of it was because she could never get over the suspicion that he was somehow involved with
I
that
wouldn't have
ambush.
married his ass in the first place. I'd be like, you got my brother almost murdered.
He essentially did the same thing Bonnie did. She got married at like 16. It was just something
I mean,
that happened back then.
Yeah, I guess, but still.
It was not wise. But anyway, so what happened is they were driving up, and Clyde, again, with his sixth sense, he looked at Bonnie and he was like, I don't know, how do you feel about it, honey? And she kind of shrugged. And as they approached the scene, he just hit the gas. Like, he didn't even stop. But what ended up happening was his family, who was parked on the side of the road, and in the car was Marie, his mother. I don't know if his father was there. His brother, LC. They were all in the car. And Marie's boyfriend. And so as he approached and went to drive past, they thought that he wanted them to follow in their car. So they turned on their headlights. They did not know that in the ditch next to the road was Sheriff, he's back again, Smoot Schmidt.
Oh my god.
Bob Alcorn and Ted Hinton. So when they turned on their headlights to follow, it illuminated Bonnie and Clyde's car, and they opened fire and started shooting. He whipped the car into a U-turn and took off down the road and managed to escape. And afterwards, Clyde's family, who witnessed it, said that Bonnie actually busted out the back window of the car with one of the shotguns and started shooting. Some people, Ted Hinton said that didn't happen, that he shot out the back window. Who knows? He probably just wanted to feel important, or he was trying to sort of protect Bonnie because a lot of people suspect he had a crush on her. Anyway,
she's taken,
so
bro.
They end up escaping, but one of the bullets had passed through the side of the car. It passed through Clyde's knees into Bonnie's knee.
Okay, so we have two cripples now.
Focused on escaping. They did not know that they had been shot through the knee until they stopped driving. And they used to do this thing where they would park at the end of a long driveway, because if a car was parked there, police would assume that it belonged to that house and they would drive past.
Right.
So Clyde got out of the car to open the gate to the driveway that they were going to park at for the night. And as he got out, he fell. Like, just couldn't walk, just fell over.
Well, yeah, your kneecaps are gone.
Was like, oh no, so she got out of the car to help
Oh, Lord.
him. Well, she got out of the car to help him.
It's like a bad joke.
Fell. And then Clyde looked at her and he said, honey, I think we've been shot. And they realized that they were bleeding from their knees, right? So they managed to get back in the car and get to a gas station to get gas and, buy whatever they needed. And there was blood running out from under the door over the running board. And back in the day, they had gas station attendants that would fill gas. So there was a gas attendant looking down at the running board.
Dude, could you imagine?
Bonnie leaned out the window. Bonnie leaned out the window to see what he was looking at and realized that the blood from her leg had trickled down her leg and was running out the car onto the running board. And so they didn't even wait for this guy to finish topping off the gas. They just drove off.
Dude, I can't imagine being that gas attendant.
No, we gotta get out of here.
He's just standing there like...
After the fact.
That's
like,
so wild.
What is my life? But they did manage to recuperate and recover. But the stupid thing about the ambush, and again, I will ridicule and bash on Smoot Schmidt till the day I die, partially because his name is so fun to bash, and also just because I don't like him as a person. Sorry if you were related to him. I mean, no
I'm not.
offense, but kind of.
I'm not sorry.
So he essentially wanted all of the fame and glory of gunning down Bonnie and Clyde. He could have asked for backup. He could have asked for help. He did not. He wanted the claim for himself. So the posse was not properly armed to take them down. They weren't prepared. And they ended up putting his entire family in danger.
I hate this man.
Clyde thought that they had an unspoken rule that no harm would come to his family. He had this thing where he didn't so much care what happened to him, but he really wanted to protect his family, especially like his mother and his sisters.
It shouldn't be an unspoken rule that you don't shoot at people that have nothing to do with the thing that is happening. It's just something that should be part of your logic and moral code as a human being and a law enforcement officer, you raging piece of shit.
So up until this point, Clyde never hunted anyone down, gunned anyone down, went looking for anyone. He always just shot if he was shot
Nah,
at, or
dude's
if he
gonna
was
lock
fleeing, or
in.
if it was a robbery gone wrong.
He's gonna lock in.
So he was pissed. So once
Rage
he and
baited.
Bonnie were able to, once he and Bonnie were able to walk again, um, he literally was like prodding him down, and Bonnie ended up talking him out of it. She was like, "Look, it's not gonna make you feel better. It's not gonna change it. Your family wasn't hurt." But from then on, he had a personal vendetta.
Dude,
against
I don't
Smooch
even
Schmidt.
blame
He
him.
hated
I don't
him
even blame him.
because
Fuck
he was
Smooch.
furious. But the funny thing too is, I personally love Marie Barrow, his littlest sister. She to me is like one of the most unhinged, hysterical characters in this whole entire.
That's what little sisters
drama
do,
and
dude.
Saga. As the shooting is happening, everyone is, cowering under the dashboard, hiding in the back seat. Marie is sitting up watching because she wants to know what's going down. And so
She's
she was
like,
able to
I'm gonna
explain
get the
later on
tea
how
no matter
everything
what,
happened.
dude.
No, she's hysterical. But remember, she's the same girl. I think I told you this story last time, where she was the one that was like blackmailing or like, manipulating her brothers into letting her use the family bike. And
Yeah.
she's a little bit of a grifter and like.
I
yeah.
love that. Good for
So
her.
anyway, so yeah, for real. So that was the Sowers ambush, and then the next big event would be January 16th was the Eastham prison raid, which was really, I think, what Clyde had been angling for since he got out of Eastham prison farm the first time. He'd always talked about wanting to break out people out of Eastham because he wanted to like save people from, essentially going through what he went through, and it was sort of this vengeance against the system.
I
that broke him and hurt him.
appreciate the sentiment, but like also there's people that are supposed to be there, my guy.
Oh yeah. No, Clyde thought that everyone else was the problem, like the system was the problem, and all the
Oh,
people
the
there
system
weren't
is
the
messed
problem.
up. I agree with you, Clyde. But also, like,
Yeah.
there's rapists and murderers in there that need to be in there. Like, you got a very raw deal, the shit end of the stick, and I feel for you, dude. But also, like, maybe just letting all of those people back out into society isn't the best idea.
Isn't the best idea. Yeah, so he didn't think of that. But anyway, they managed to organize an escape for some of the people. He always wanted to essentially bust out Aubrey Scaly for having helped
Okay,
him,
that makes
for
sense.
taking the fall for the murder of Ed Crowder. What ended up happening is Aubrey Scaly didn't get out, and I don't remember exactly how that happened, because the plan went pretty much according to plan. But in the end, I don't think as many people escaped as he wanted.
It's probably
But
like
it's also
2.
funny because even if all the people he wanted to escape did, there's no way he could have actually gotten them all out because he didn't have enough space in his car. So I'm like, I don't know how.
Yeah,
far ahead
that's
he
fair.
thought on this. But anyway, they managed to. One of the men had smuggled some like hacksaws in, and they had planted some guns nearby. And anyway, they managed to bust out Hilton Bibby, Joe Palmer, Raymond Hamilton, who Raymond Hamilton was the trying to bust out originally, which also kind of doesn't make sense because Clyde didn't like Raymond Hamilton, but I feel like he felt like he owed him. But anyway, and Henry Methvin. What's interesting is, and I believe there was one other man as well, I just can't think of his name. Henry Methvin was not supposed to escape. He just saw these people all escaping and was like, I want out too.
Valid.
Because in the process, Joe Palmer shot down one of the mounted officers, which is part of the reason why after that Bonnie and Clyde's time was really limited. Like, it was only a matter of time before they were
Well,
gunned down.
because at that
then-
point, too, it's like this officer didn't have anything to do with any of the other shit that was happening with Bonnie and Clyde. It's not like he was with Smooch. This guy, he wasn't part of the other ambushes. He's literally just there doing his job. So, like, I get the resentment towards that. Like, one, I don't think you should shoot cops, period. But also, like, these other officers are not exactly giving themselves a good name with the choices that they're making. But this guy's just there working to support, I'm assuming, a family. So I can understand why that's like, hey, maybe don't do that.
Yeah. So after this is when Frank Hamer and Manny Galt and the rest of the posse get involved with, tracking them down and taking them down. But this is one of those moments where you look back at the story of Bonnie and Clyde and you're like, this is the moment where you made a choice that sealed your fate. Because Henry Methvin was not supposed to get out. He wasn't even supposed to be part of the gang. And as they're getting back to the car, he and I believe Raymond Hamilton start arguing because Raymond didn't like him. He didn't want ass behind. And Clyde said, I'm not leaving anyone behind. Anyone who wants out gets out. And he took Henry Methvin in. And if you know the story of Bonnie and Clyde, Henry Methvin ended up not being a really good person.
I
but Clyde
mean,
took a
are we
chance on him and tried to help him.
surprised given the circumstances? No.
Given the circumstances. So anyway, so they escape. Eventually, everyone, and there was actually, I think, like a fifth or sixth man that did escape that had no clue what was going on.
Good for
Wasn't even
him.
part of the
Good for
gang.
him, dude.
Ran off into the woods. But they captured him like the same day. He's like, I
Oh.
didn't even know what happened, guys. I don't even know how I got out here.
He's like, I saw people
Like,
running and I
man.
thought something serious is happening. I was like, fuck it, I'm out of here too, guys.
Exactly. And they took that man back. He was like, okay.
He's
well,
like,
that didn't
alright,
work.
whatever, I guess.
Yeah, and then it was just a couple of months before, like one by one, they all got arrested again. Like Hilton Bibby was like, "I'm not staying with you guys." He went his own way and got like arrested like a month later.
Nice.
Joe Palmer, he got arrested again. Raymond Hamilton got arrested again. So yeah, it just really didn't work out. People just kind of kept getting arrested. But Henry Methvin stuck with the gang for a while, and at this point, I just want to make clear, W.D. Jones had left the gang.
Okay.
Clyde kind of was like, "Look, of the gang, try and arrest you, tell them that we made you do all of these things, like save your own skin, I'm not mad at you." And after the fact, he held true to that. Like when W.D. Jones was giving interviews where he miraculously managed to be asleep for every major event that ever happened to Bonnie and Clyde.
Hell
Clyde was
yeah.
like, yeah, he was asleep.
Great alibi,
He
dude.
liked to sleep.
That was
I don't know
awesome.
why, but he was always asleep.
He's a growing boy. He's 16.
So,
He eats all the
anyway.
time and he sleeps.
Yeah, he was like, yeah, that tracks. But what was funny is when Hamilton was eventually arrested, he got pissed at Hamilton for like bad mouthing him, and it was just funny the difference between him being like, W.D. Jones, you should lie and tell them you slept through everything and we captured you. And then Raymond kind of does the same thing, and he's like, that fucker. Like,
It's
just
okay
not
when
like Raymond
WD
Hamilton.
does it because we like
and what's funny,
WD.
too, Exactly, but when you do it, it's not allowed. But part of it was, I think, Clyde was a little jealous of Raymond. He was a more successful bank robber, and Clyde wanted to be the best at everything and in charge all the. So he didn't like Raymond. And then the other thing too was at one point when Raymond was part of their gang, he brought his girlfriend Mary O'Dare into the gang. Bonnie and Clyde hated her. They called her the washerwoman
Nice.
because they thought she was ugly,
Oh,
and they did not like her. And at one point, her and Bonnie were sitting in the car, and Mary was trying to be helpful or just trying to be a drama queen, who knows. And she told Bonnie, I don't know why you stay with that asshole. Like, you should just, poison him and take all his money and leave.
dude, at this
And then
point,
when
they're
Cole got
committed.
back-
Like, her leaving him
Yeah.
is not an option at this point, so you can shut up.
She's at this point.
The
at this point, she's
codependency.
dependent on him. The woman can't even walk.
The codependency here and
And
the
so-
trauma bonding is, like, off the charts.
Exactly. And so Clyde and Raymond get back from robbing whatever bank they were robbing, and Bonnie pulls Clyde aside and tells him, and Clyde's like, okay, both of you out of the gang. 'Cause at this point,
Damn.
Raymond had already tried to steal money from Clyde,
Oh,
a past bank haul.
fuck that
Like,
guy.
Clyde caught them in the rearview mirror stealing money from what they had stolen.
Unacceptable.
And Clyde always tried to evenly divide the share so everyone got a fair amount.
Mhm.
So at this point, he was like, last straw, kicked him out, and then after that, Raymond was arrested. So by that point, Clyde was like, I don't care what happens to that man. I hate him.
Valid.
But yeah, so anyway, so the East Tim prison raid happens, and then the next big event that really was the beginning of the end was the Grapevine, Texas Easter slaying or massacre that happened April 1st, 1934.
On
This is the point where
Easter?
public opinion really changed against Bonnie. Up till this point, Bonnie was considered just kind of like
There.
a gun moll. She was a bad girl, but she wasn't like an active gang member. She
Yeah.
wasn't killing anyone. But what happened was officers Holloway and E.B. Wheeler were motorcycle cops. It was Wheeler's, it was Holloway's
I
first
kind
day
of
as a motorcycle
forgot
cop. He was
motorcycles existed back then.
Yeah. Well, it was Holloway's first day as a motorcycle cop. He was very young. He had a young
Awkward.
fiance at home. And what's interesting, this is another gut-wrenching part of the story. For some reason, this fact always just eats away at me. He was scared that he would accidentally crash his motorcycle or something
Aw.
and his gun would discharge. So he had taken all the bullets out of his gun and put them in
Buddy.
his pocket.
Oh,
Because he
brother.
didn't want to hurt anyone.
Oh, baby boy.
And they were with another officer who, again, this is hysterical to me. This man must have been the most clueless person to ever live. They see this car parked off on the side of the road. There's a woman and two men. The woman's in the car. She's got a bunny in her lap.
Aw.
Because Bonnie had bought a pet rabbit to give
Aw.
her for Easter. So they're sitting there, and I think Henry Methvin was leading up. Clyde was like taking a nap. So anyway, so this car's pulled off to the side. The first officer just keeps driving. Just
Nice.
gone. Didn't even stop.
You
didn't
know,
even
he
care.
probably did the whole
Wheeler and Holloway.
not my problem and then just kept going.
Yeah, he's like, whatever. Wheeler and Holloway slow down and turn off onto this side road because they thought that it was a stranded motorist that needed help.
Oh.
So they pull up. They at this point, Clyde wakes up. Bonnie and Methvin had both been drinking So both of them probably weren't thinking the clearest. And what ended up happening next is kind of a blur. They got off their motorcycles and started approaching the car. And Methvin was new to the gang, so he didn't know all the vernacular terminology. Clyde had said, let's take them, meaning let's kidnap them, drive them up the street, drop them off somewhere, right? He always preferred to kidnap people versus killing them.
Well,
and
that's
part of it
good,
too
at
was
least.
By the time they got back to a phone. Yeah, and part of it was by the time they got back to a phone to call someone and say what had happened, they were already out of town.
Right,
And really, he just
yeah.
wanted to buy time to escape. Methvin didn't know that. Methvin thought he meant let's kill them.
Oh,
So
no.
Methvin opened fire and started shooting. And then at that point, Clyde was pulled in and he started shooting. They shot both officers. Wheeler, by all accounts, died instantly. Holloway did not.
Oh, no.
He was still alive, laying on the ground. Now, this is where eyewitness accounts get pulled in, and it's very controversial. The Giggles, which is an amazing last name, the Giggles were like an older couple that was driving by on a nearby road. They said that they saw a tall man, so probably Methvin, because Clyde was really short. They saw him approach Holloway and angle a rifle at him and shoot him in the face. That's what they saw. Another nearby farmer named Schaefer, I hate this man with a passion because I think he's stupid. He said that he saw a woman with frizzy hair wearing pants approach Holloway, shoot him in the head, and his head bounced like a rubber ball. Later, he said, now mind you, his farm was so far away he could not have heard this even if he had
I have so much to say, but I'm going to let you finish.
He said afterwards, for a different interview, he said that he heard the woman say, look how his head bounced like a rubber ball. I'm like, okay, first of all, you could not have heard that. And even Clyde's sister Marie later said, like, she went to the location.
You lying motherfucker.
Could not have heard that if he tried. But anyway, the other thing that's interesting is Bonnie didn't wear pants. Because of her injury, it would bother her leg to wear pants. And she also, because she was just a little bit, she was a fashionista. She hated the look of pants, and she was
okay,
short, so she
fair
felt
enough.
they
I
made
hate
her look
pants too, but I like shorts.
So she wouldn't wear them after morning. And so you can see what they all were wearing. And Bonnie was wearing an Easter dress with little high heels and a hat. Like, she was not wearing pants.
So this guy
was describing Blanche.
Yeah.
And Blanche at that point was already in prison.
So
not an accurate statement at all.
Here's the thing. This is a prime example of why eyewitness testimony is not always that great. Because one, it can be helpful if you have multiple people saying the same thing. Like, okay, cool. At that point, you're corroborating each other. I get it. But you also have to check out, like, oh, if they're saying, I saw it from here, this is where I was. Like, you have to vet that shit. You can't just go around saying, like, oh, yeah, this is a fact. Like, you can't propagate that sort of misinformation.
Exactly.
I'm more inclined to believe the Giggles who were like, oh, yeah, like, we were right here. We saw this. Like, this happened, compared to a dude that's, like, half a mile over yonder that's like, oh, yeah, I saw it with my own eyes. No, you didn't. Like, I don't care what kind of glasses you have unless you're standing there with freaking binoculars. And also, like, I'm pretty sure that in my firearms class, they tell you that when people get shot, there's the Hollywood effect of, like, oh, they fly back and they fall over. And that's not really what happens. When you get shot, like, you remain, the force enters and exits your body super fast. It doesn't, like, knock you over the way that it's depicted. It's not going to make your head freaking bounce. It's obviously going to make the back of your head blow out because of the exit force, but your head's not going to sit there and go boom, boom, boom. Like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard. That's not, that doesn't make sense at all. Like, how did nobody look at him and go, you're a lying bitch, stop? But everybody back then was just like, oh, he's right. He knows what he's talking about.
Wait till you hear this amazing stellar detective work.
Oh my God, you're just pissing me off at this point.
They go to the location of the shooting, right? And they're taking in the evidence. And there's some, alcohol bottles with some fingerprints that they don't check because I don't even think fingerprinting was a thing or it was in its infancy. So there's fingerprints that they don't take on these bottles. But because it's whiskey or whatever, and because there was a cigar, they just knew Bonnie was the killer because there was a cigar.
What the fuck?
Bottles.
How does that make any sense? What is this being based on?
And she had a habit. And she had a habit of like, because she didn't want to smell like alcohol, she would drink her whiskey or her alcohol, and then she would like suck on lemon rind or orange rind or whatever. And so because there was lemon rinds, well, they knew she had to have killed him. I'm like, no, all
No,
that
that
proves is
just
that she
means
was
she was
probably drinking
there.
alcohol, like people already said.
It's just
Yeah,
showing that she
doesn't
was
mean she killed
there.
anyone.
Yeah, like fuck off, dude.
Exactly. So anyway, so that was the Easter shooting.
You're just
And
gonna
from
continue
then
to make
on,
me
it was
mad.
oh, for real. So public opinion really soured because, of course, the paper didn't care about facts. They just
Yeah.
said, "Okay, Bonnie's a killer,"
Is it all
and
that different from today? Not really.
so all public opinion turned against her. Right. So public opinion really turned against them because the other thing was the paper started to really play up the like poor innocent police officer angle, and in Holloway and Wheeler's case, they really hadn't done anything
Yeah.
wrong at
No,
all.
that I can totally
And
understand.
the other thing was Holloway's widow attended his funeral in her wedding dress that she was going to wear to marry
Oh,
him.
stop.
And so that, of course, was all in the papers, and people no longer sympathized with Clyde and Bonnie because here are these two people that killed this young man who was just,
I
a
get
good
it.
citizen, and
I get it though. Like I can't
So
I
at
can't
this
blame
point,
him.
public opinion changed, and Frank Hamer, who was a retired Texas Ranger, came out of retirement per the request of Ma Ferguson, who he hated. He could not stand Ma Ferguson, who was the governor of Texas at the time.
You're
And
gonna hate this man and then end up
he-
being his little bitch and come out of retirement? Come on, dude. Come on.
Yeah. So essentially, he got brought in to track them down, which he had started doing and really started doing in earnest after the Grapevine slaying. And originally, he was gonna just try and find like here's the thing. I don't just like Bonnie and Clyde, I can't form a clear opinion of Hamer. I have mixed feelings on him as a person. Hamer early on had thought that the easiest way to kill Bonnie and Clyde would be to just find where they were sleeping and kill them in their sleep. Because he thought that it would be impossible to kill them while they were awake and on the run because Clyde would always fire first or fire back if he was shot at, and he didn't want to be on the receiving end of gunfire.
So what I'm hearing is
So
he was a
initially-
coward and just thought, "Oh, well if I assassinate them, it's fine."
Yeah, Hamer's an interesting figure because, like, even some of the early stories of his career, I mean, there was a time where a, like, kind of local criminal or whatever had a vendetta against him and, like, shot him. And then Hamer, like, shot him in the back and killed him in retaliation. So it's like, in some respects,
I get
feel
it.
like
You don't want to be
wasn't better than
Yeah.
I feel like he wasn't better than Clyde, but he thought he was better than Clyde. But he recounts a moment where he felt and actually I can't remember if he did kill the man or if he just shot him and didn't kill him. I don't remember exactly, but he was like, that was a turning point for him where he realized he could have become essentially a villain and he didn't want to be, so he became a good guy. But I would argue that he kind of just became a killer with a bad because he still killed a lot of Native Americans and a lot of people that probably didn't need to be killed.
Yeah.
So
He
anyway,
sounds like the type of guy that's
he,
just like, if I can shoot you, I will. And that's the type of person that doesn't need a badge or a gun. Like, there's a time and place for that.
Yeah, it's interesting. He has a lot of relatives alive, like, grandchildren and stuff like that are very adamant that he's a hero and they don't accept any slander against him. But then they slander Bonnie and Clyde to high heaven because they're evil, murderous villains that deserved to die. And
Yeah.
I would argue that there's very few, if any, good guys in the story of Bonnie and Clyde. The majority of people involved are very flawed individuals. The only people that I would consider a hero would probably be Holloway and officers like him that just happened to be in the wrong place at the
Right.
wrong time.
And, like, his
To me, I would
intention
argue
was
that
to
those
help.
people-
That's why he was there. He was like, oh shit, these guys are stranded on the roadway. Like, I'm going to go help you. I get that. I respect that.
To me, those figures are probably the only actual heroes. Everyone else involved, I feel like, had very selfish motives.
Yeah.
On both
And they
sides,
put so
whether
many
they were
people
part
at
of the drug
risk
gang or
that
part of
didn't
the
need to
law.
be at risk, too. Like, to me, that's not
Over
okay.
and over again. Yeah. So anyway, Hamer gets involved. He realizes that he can essentially drive Bonnie and Clyde to Louisiana to Henry Methvin's family. He noticed that they had a habit of going back and forth between Texas to Missouri to Louisiana and so on. So he realized that if he didn't have a law presence in Louisiana, that essentially it would lure Bonnie and Clyde into a false sense of safety and they would return there enough that they could maybe ambush them and corner them. And so he was in negotiation and in talk with lawmen in Louisiana to try and essentially put together an ambush to ambush Bonnie and Clyde. But what was happening was the lawmen in Louisiana didn't really like or respect Hamer. they wanted to go directly to the FBI, which was still in its infancy. And essentially they started bypassing Frank Hamer to go to the FBI because they
LOL.
also wanted the glory of being the ones to have tipped off the FBI or to have found Bonnie and Clyde. So everyone was kind of trying to be the one to catch and kill them. Everyone wanted the glory for themselves, and because of that, I think they didn't work together as effectively as they could have. And what ended up happening was they went to Henry Methvin's father, Ivy Methvin, and they basically got him to turn coat. Like they got him to agree to have Henry Methvin give them information, with the idea that Henry's, crimes in Texas and stuff would basically, the slate would be wiped clean.
Sort of like a plea
and he
deal,
wouldn't have
but
to go to jail
not
for
really
it.
a plea deal.
Yeah, if he would be helpful in catching Bonnie and Clyde.
Okay.
Unbeknownst to Bonnie and Clyde, they did not know that Henry
Yeah.
was planning to betray them. Which is just really bothers me because obviously Clyde never needed to save Henry. He chose to save him
Yeah,
from prison.
it's biting
and
the
the
hand
fact
that
he
feeds
was
you.
loyal to him. Yeah, and it bothers me because I'm like, you can say what you will about Bonnie and Clyde, but they were loyal to the people that were loyal to them, and there were a lot of times that they were compassionate towards individuals. I mean, there were a lot of times they weren't, but there were a lot of times that they really tried to go out of their way to help people, and those people just turned on them, and I feel like that just further fed the belief that nobody cared for them, which I think probably just made them more violent. So anyway, so all of this was going on behind the scenes. And at this time, Bonnie and Clyde were still going home to visit their family. And they, at one point, had told their family that they were thinking of purchasing a plot of land in Louisiana, not far from Methvin's place. And then all the family could go visit them there. And Emma Parker put in Fugitives that she really thought it was just kind of naive talk to make them feel better about everything.
Yeah, because I mean, realistically, how are they going to do that?
End one way. They were never going to be able to. They weren't going to have a home. That wasn't going to happen. And then I had never thought of this, but in Go Down Together, Jeff Gwynne kind of discusses where they would have even gotten the money for that. Because, yeah, they robbed banks, but they never stole enough money to afford a piece of land anywhere. But I guess there was some, back dealing going on behind the scenes. Like, Clyde had agreed to bust some criminals out of prison because at this point he had a reputation for doing that. So he had agreed to bust some criminals out of prison, and in exchange they gave him a lot of money, and he was maybe not going to actually bust them out of prison, but he had his money, so he was going to buy a plot of land. Anyway, that's all a little bit muddy because, again...
Hear me out. He's buying the land so the criminals he busts out have a place to stay.
Right, exactly. There you go.
I got you, Clyde.
At one point he visited his family, and he wanted his father to sign some papers, but then... And his father was illiterate, so he couldn't read what the papers were. But then neither one of them had a pen, so Clyde was like, never mind, you can just sign him next time. And there was no next time because obviously the ambush happened shortly after. But after the fact, his mother and father speculated that he was essentially trying to create like a will, so when he died, all of the money that hadn't been spent, all of their possessions would go to his family to provide for them. But because that paper was never signed and nobody ever found that paper in the car and stuff, it never happened. So anyway, another interesting thing that happened around this time was they would visit Methvin's family and go to like essentially like cookouts, things like that. They would hang out with his extended family. And one of the Methvins, I can't remember if it was Henry's sister-in-law or whatever, she was pregnant at the time. And everyone was so excited and gushing about it. And Bonnie had told her, oh, well, I'm pregnant too. And of course, at that point, all of the Methvins were like, well, that's kind of not a good thing. You are an outlaw on the run from the law.
Right, yeah. Oops.
So
it's okay.
The women,
it'll be fine.
One of the women who was interviewed, years later, had said that she remembers talking to the other Methvin women, and like they were like, okay, we need to help this woman. This is not gonna end well. Like, we should take this baby in, just something, right?
Do you think Bonnie was just lying because it's something that she wanted and would have wanted but couldn't have?
I think so. Because here's the thing. So there's some speculation, and it's never been 100% proven whether she was or wasn't pregnant when she died. Her family vehemently denied that she was pregnant. But again, her family was very focused on image, especially Emma Parker.
Yeah.
So if she was, they never would have admitted it.
Right, and there's like the whole religious, the religious thing of like, well, it's out of wedlock, so it'd be a bastard child,
exactly.
and yeah.
The Methvins seemed to think that she was because she said so. But again, Bonnie did tend to really want attention. She always wanted a baby, and I think it bothered her that she couldn't.
Mm.
At the time that she said that, she was very heavily reliant on alcohol. So
Yeah.
I don't know what her state of mind was when she said it.
I
So
doubt
there was a lot going
I
on.
doubt that.
It's possible. Yeah. I personally think she wanted that to be true.
Mhm.
I don't think it was. I think she was desperate for a baby because she was always so lonely, and she had this idea that if she could have a baby, then she wouldn't feel so lonely.
Yeah.
She kind of wanted to use a baby to patch her hurt, and I don't think that that was ever going to actually do that.
Yeah.
And also because her family said that she couldn't conceive children due to a botched surgery that she'd had when she was younger. So I really think it would have been unlikely. And there's some people that speculate that her or Clyde had like a venereal disease. So I think there was a lot that implies that that probably
Yeah.
wasn't true. Anyway, so that was all kind of going on. And then essentially the ambush on May 23rd, 1934, it was supposed to actually happen the day before. But one of the local lawmen in Louisiana really wanted the FBI involved, to the point where he was like, "Hold up, we're not going to have the ambush today. I need the FBI involved."
You know what? I
But his
kind of get it
contact with
though.
the FBI But his contact with the FBI was working another case and never replied to him. So
Oh.
finally he was like, "Okay, screw it.
Awkward.
Today's the day." So Bonnie and Clyde, that morning, they stopped at Canfield's Cafe for coffee. Some reports say that they ate donuts, and then they got sandwiches for the road. What's interesting is Canfield's Cafe is still standing. It's not really a restaurant
nice.
anymore. It does have a little cafe attached. It's actually a Bonnie and Clyde museum that you can
Oh,
visit.
okay.
You can actually order their last meal. It's offered on the menu,
Damn.
which is interesting. So they had their little sandwiches, and they got in the car, and it was about 6 miles away from this restaurant where they were ambushed. It was the dirt road with some, brush and trees kind of, on both sides. And the posse was 6 individuals. It was retired Texas Rangers Frank Hamer and Manny Galt, who were old friends. Texas deputies Ted Hinton, who Frank Hamer for some reason did not like, probably because Ted Hinton sort of had a soft spot for Bonnie, and he didn't really respect that about Hinton. And he also, I think, thought Hinton was full of himself. But the funny thing is,
Hamer, have you looked in the mirror? Have you looked in the mirror, bro? Do you have any sort of
Exactly.
self-reflection?
Exactly. Exactly. And then Bob Alcorn, who Hamer loved, funnily enough. And then there were 2 Louisiana deputies and sheriffs who I can't
Smooch
remember
wasn't
their
there
names,
though,
where
right?
they hit out.
Smooch wasn't there, so he didn't get to be
Smooch
part of
didn't-
this?
No, he was not.
Hell yeah! Get
No.
fucked, Smooch! Eat my ass, dude.
I
You don't
know.
get to be part of this. Get out of
All
here,
of that.
dumb
All
bitch.
of that, he wasn't even involved. And what's funny is by this point, the papers were just ragging on him constantly.
Good.
He kept failing to catch Bonnie and
He
Clyde. And then
deserves
by
it.
the end, he wasn't even involved. He
Disappointment.
still kind of tried to take a little credit for it because he's like, "But those were my deputies," and they're like, "Yeah, but you were."
Dude, get out of here. Get out of here.
So anyway, they, hunkered down in the brush, and what they did is they had Ivy Methvin pull his logging truck off to the side of the road, and they had him stage it so it looked like he had a flat tire and was trying to change his tire because they needed to get Clyde to slow down because Clyde drove fast. They would never be able to shoot him if he was driving at his regular speed. So they're like, we need to have some sort of decoy to make him slow down so that we can fire. So anyway, I think it was Bob Alcorn who had the binoculars. He had seen Bonnie and Clyde. Hamer had never met or seen Bonnie and Clyde, so he needed someone to identify who they were
makes
to make
sense.
sure they were shooting the correct people. So Alcorn was like, okay, it's them. And so they all had, I believe, shotguns, some pistols, and I believe Hamer might have had a BAR. I think they only had one among them, though, because the FBI was really hesitant to give them, military grade
Yeah,
weapons.
that I
They're
can
like,
understand.
"I don't know about that."
Especially because they're just shooting willy-nilly all the
We
time.
should.
Like,
Yeah, because you guys just shoot everything. So anyway, Alcorn said that's them. So they're driving. They start to slow down, because Clyde wanted to help Ivy. And one of the officers, and it's kind of disputed who, somebody opened fire. I think that they got anxious or excited. Because after the fact, Hamer swore that they were going to yell at them to halt or put their hands up, because you had to yell a warning. You were legally supposed
you have
to
to
yell a
establish yourself. Like they
You have to
tell
give
you,
them a
you have to
chance.
announce your presence. You have to tell them that you're a peace officer and let them know that. Because if you don't, then they don't know to stop or to slow down or to listen to commands.
Exactly. So Hamer always swore that they were going to do that. He also always swore that they did not want to kill Bonnie. I feel like that is bullshit based on what
I
happened
think he
next.
probably got shit on a
So-
lot for what happened to her, and then after the fact backtracked and was like, oh, maybe we were a little bit aggressive
Shouldn't
in
have
this.
done that.
Yeah.
Exactly. So one of the deputies opened fire. They shot. Clyde died instantly to a gunshot wound to his head.
Oh, wow.
Part of it was too, and I had never realized this because you don't see it in movies very often, that they had the windows on the car rolled down partway, or so it was like a clear shot. You don't have to shoot through the glass.
Yeah.
You just shoot
I mean,
directly through
interesting
into his head.
fact as someone who's shot through car windows, if you're shooting out, I think I might be flip-flopping it. If you shoot out, it either goes slightly higher or lower because it changes the trajectory and the spin of the bullet. And then if you're shooting in, actually I think if you shoot out, it goes up. If you shoot in through glass, it goes down. So what's interesting is there's a chance that if he probably had the window rolled up, it might not have hit him in the head, or it would have, but maybe not in like a vital spot because it would have changed the trajectory. It's really weird how that works because
exactly.
I'd never thought about it until I'd done it during training, and I was like, oh shit, that is weird. Like you wouldn't think
wow.
about it.
Yeah. So they shot headshot to Clyde. He died instantly. Bonnie screamed. The officers after the fact described it as, they said she screamed like a panther, which I think is kind of an interesting
How do they know what that sounds like?
I know. I'm like,
How many
panthers have you met in your
yeah.
lifetime? These country bumpkin cops. I'm
Let
like,
alone
someone had a flair for the
let
police.
alone
Someone really
panthers
wants
that
to
are
be writer.
screaming at you, dude.
Yeah. So anyway, she screamed like a panther. I think one report said she screamed like a banshee. I'm like, that one makes a little bit more
Yeah,
sense
that
than
I
a
can
panther.
understand.
I don't know. And essentially after that first round was fired, all hell broke loose. They all started firing.
They
all
probably
popped up
didn't
and
know
just
if it
started
was
shooting.
Clyde shooting or if it was one of their own at first.
Probably. It was just kind of chaos. And what happened was Clyde's foot had slipped off the clutch, and the car started rolling forward because at this point he was already dead.
Yeah.
They saw the car moving and thought, oh my god, he's escaping. So of course they just keep shooting. And by the time that they had finished shooting, somewhere between 120 and 160 bullets had been fired.
Holy
into the car.
shit, that is overkill. That is ridiculous because not all of them hit their target. I'd be curious to see what their positioning was and if they had any really bad crossfire, because that's something that they always tell you to be cognizant about. Where like if they were like across the way shooting, like they're lucky they didn't kill anybody on their own, of their
Well,
own.
they were all on one side of the road,
Okay.
so I don't think that would have been a
Okay, good.
possibility. They were like basically lined up on one
Because I could
side.
totally see them doing that, given the history that has been established between the officers in this story. That I was like, I don't know about this, guys.
The interesting thing is at one point I had done some research and looked it up, and if I'm gracious, maybe 25% of the shots actually hit their mark.
Dude, that is so bad.
I believe it was about 10 to 15 bullets to Clyde, or they counted exit wounds to Clyde, or sorry, entry wounds to Clyde, and close to 20 entry wounds on Bonnie. What's always bothered me about it is, we know that Bonnie screamed, but the thing is she had just enough time to realize that Clyde was dead before she died. And the thing was, the first bullets to strike her were through her arms. And so she would have felt that pain, and she would have realized what was happening.
Yeah.
And her last moments were full of a lot of primal, visceral fear before she
Yeah.
died, whereas Clyde died instantly. He never had a second to register what had happened. He was just already dead.
Yeah.
But her, I mean, she knew what was happening.
Right.
And what always bothers me is when I talk about this in depth online, I get a lot of misogynistic, vitriolic hate from men saying that they're glad that she felt those bullets, that they're thankful that she died that way because she deserved it. And when I talk about the fact that this woman was not a killer, yes, she wielded a gun. Yes, she did some, she participated in crime, but she was not a killer. She did not deserve to die that way. And honestly, I don't believe Clyde deserves
I
to
don't
die
think
that way either, no matter
anybody
how horrible he
deserves
was.
to die by getting shot 25 times. I mean,
Exactly.
there's very few exceptions where I would say, yes, you deserve that. And we're talking like Ted Bundy type of people where it's like, yeah, you probably deserve to be shot 25 times. Just saying.
Yeah, so it's so that always bothers me because I'm like, nobody deserves that, and this is just an excuse for you to take your violence out on women specifically on a woman that's been dead
Well,
100 years and can't fight back. So
the
you
other
feel like
thing
it's not harmful when it is.
Yeah, the other thing that's concerning too is like they teach us, and again, tactics have changed so much from back then to now, but they're like, you have to be aware of what's called your backdrop. Like, I remember having an oh shit moment in the academy when we were using sim rounds and sim guns where it's like, just because somebody's shooting at you, if you can't see them and you don't know where they're at, you can't just shoot back in that direction. Like, it's not the military. Like, sometimes you're in
Yeah.
that shit situation of like, you can't shoot them. And in this case, in this particular case, it's not like Clyde or Bonnie were shooting at them, but like they clearly didn't have a regard for their surroundings. If they're shooting 170 bullets and say maybe 35 of them are actually hitting what they're supposed to, like they're lucky they didn't just kill a bunch of random people that were nearby. Um, like,
Well, I think they figured because they were out in the countryside, the
yeah,
only other person that was nearby was Methvin, who had, from what I remember, had dove under his
right.
truck to hide. And honestly, I really don't think they gave a shit about Methvin. I
Probably
think they were
not.
like,
They were
well, if
like,
he
oh,
died,
well,
he
if we get
died.
him too, oh well. Like, it's
Yeah,
interesting to
they're like
me.
Bonnie and Clyde. Yeah.
Like, I
And
get.
then there was also
Sorry, go ahead.
there was a logging truck that was driving the opposite direction that obviously they stopped because they're like, what the
Yeah.
hell is going on? Um, but yeah, and then what's interesting too is right afterward, a couple of things happened that I find kind of intriguing. Number one is right away Hamer started trying to build the case of self-defense. He started telling the papers, oh, they were reaching for their guns.
You,
We
dude.
saw them touch the guns. None of that happened. Based on the positioning in the car, I don't think there's any way they could have grabbed their guns. Um, None of them are holding a gun when they died. There was a tiny little I can't remember the name for it. It was
Was
it
it
was
a handgun?
special. It was a
Oh,
specific
okay.
type of pistol that was very tiny that was meant to fit in like a woman's purse, right?
Yeah.
It was supposed to be for women. Bonnie had one taped to the inside of her thigh with medical tape. And it was supposed to be because like no man's gonna search there, so if she ever had to
Yeah.
get in and out of a place, she could have a weapon with her. It was
Right.
a safety thing. But she didn't have time to reach for that. No, neither of them were holding guns, and so immediately I feel like that is untrue. Also, there's reports that say that Hamer actually was one of the people that thought Bonnie was pregnant when she died.
Okay,
That didn't
cool.
stop
So
him from
now
shooting
you're
her.
just like, whatever, I'll kill whoever I want because I can.
Yeah, because he was like, well, it didn't. He had told the papers, I don't remember the exact quote, that he took no pride in killing a woman, that it made him sick to think he killed a woman, but then when he remembered who she had killed, then he didn't feel so bad. The irony in the statement is the fact that we never actually had any proof she killed anyone. You are going purely off of the newspapers who published an eyewitness statement that was never proven to be true by a man who may or may not have actually seen
Yeah.
what happened.
Well, the other thing too is one thing that I think is very important when it comes to being an officer or something like that is they really hammer in like you should still be compassionate regardless of the person. Like if he's bragging about how he doesn't feel bad about killing somebody, like that's fucked up because I remember being told a story from one of the sergeants that was in my like academy and he was like I sobbed in my shower for 2 hours after I shot a man because he was shooting at me. And he's like I felt bad. Did that guy like was I justified in what I did? Yes. Was that guy a bad man? Yes, but I took another human being's life. And like that if that doesn't bother you, like you should not be wearing a badge or having a gun or working in law enforcement like at all. Like there's just so much inherently wrong with like the police side of things in all of this where I'm just like, look, I get it. Bonnie and Clyde were not stand-up citizens, but neither were any of these officers outside of Holloway and the other gentleman that was with him that were killed. Like the prison guard during the prison break. Like all of these guys made really shit decisions that put other people in risk, just like Bonnie and Clyde did. So like to shit exclusively on Bonnie and Clyde for what happened like feels completely inappropriate in my opinion because I think everybody involved in this was immature in their decision making, impulsive in their decision making, and everybody involved, whether it's Bonnie and Clyde or the officers, had egos that got in the way of them considering other people and having genuine human emotion. Like you should not be saying, "Oh wow, I'm so glad that I killed these people. I don't feel bad about it." Like at that point, you're just as bad as they are. Like fuck you, dude. Like I'm sorry, that's you shouldn't be saying that.
So, following the ambush, what's interesting is Ted Hinton had a like video camera with him, and so he actually pulled out the video camera and took footage of the scene, which is good because otherwise, we wouldn't have this historic footage. In the beginning of the film, it looks like there's fog in the air, and that's all gun smoke from
That's
the
crazy.
amount of rounds that were fired. And the thing was, obviously, he didn't immediately pull this camera out. That smoke was still in the air from the sheer amount
That's
of rounds that
wild.
were fired into this car. The other thing that's interesting is Hinton was the one who opened the passenger side door. And I don't know if I said this in part one. Hinton, before he was a deputy sheriff, he was a mailman, interestingly enough. Like,
That's
he worked
weird.
for the post office in Texas. And he was a patron of the restaurant that Bonnie was a waitress at. So he was a regular patron of Bonnie's. He knew her personally.
Wow.
There's some reports that say that they potentially were classmates at one point.
Okay.
He was around the same age as her, so it's possible. I don't know if that's true or not, or how well they knew
That'd
each
be
other
kind of
if they
neat
were in school together.
in like a weird way.
But and some adaptations do that just to kind of drive home, like, wow, they knew each other. How crazy that he became her killer, or one of her killers.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was the one to open the door, and when he opened the door, she essentially like fell out of the car almost, like, and he had to grab her and put her back into the car. And there's a couple of stills and photos from the footage that Hinton took where you can see her slumped against Clyde and her arm is like really stiff and straight, and that was her positioning after he righted her body. So we don't really know how she was in the car after the fact. But you can see there's a lot of, and look it up at your own discretion, it's very violent imagery. And if you have safe search on, it will not populate it. There are post-death photos of Bonnie and Clyde that were taken at the coroner's office. There's a few stills from the video. They sort of replicate the staging of the scene and that footage in the way they shoot that final ambush scene. But, you know, when they opened the door, they realized Bonnie had a bite taken out of it in her lap, as well as a road map and some sort of fruit in her lap. They didn't say whether it was like a pear or an apple or a peach.
I mean, I guess they probably didn't care.
Yeah. And what's always bothered me about this case is at this point people had heard gunshots, so people started literally walking from town to the site, driving, and people started surrounding the scene. And they started looting the car. They tried to cut Bonnie and Clyde's hair.
Excuse
me? They took the money out of Bonnie's purse.
Jesus Christ,
people. They tried
people.
to cut off Clyde's trigger finger. Someone tried to cut off Clyde's ear. People opened the trunk and started pulling things out of the trunk. They tried stealing all of their possessions. At the time, part of the negotiation with Ma Ferguson, who was the governor of Texas, was that because the officers were paid so little for hunting down and killing Bonnie and Clyde, that part of reimbursing the costs that they had expended was that they would be allowed to take souvenirs from the ambush.
Okay, so I'm sorry, but that's just straight up serial killer shit. That's what serial killers do. Like, you should not want souvenirs of people that you killed. Like, I'm sorry, that's fucked up.
So Bonnie and Clyde were still sitting dead in the car, and the first thing the officers did after Hinton, took video footage, was they started sorting through the car and taking the things that they wanted. They walked all those things to their car and locked them in their cars before they went back to the scene and started actually, like, taking stock of, the scene and what had happened. And Hamer he got first pick because he was, the one in charge. He took all of their guns, essentially for himself, their personal guns, like their pistols and things. It kind of sickens me to think that he took the pistol off of Bonnie.
Hang on a second.
On her thigh.
Hear me out, though.
For some reason.
You are mad, rightfully so, that there were certain, like, officers were killed, and you're going to take the firearms that they likely used to kill those officers and keep them for yourself? How?
Because the logic behind it was that eventually, because Bonnie and Clyde were such notorious criminals, these souvenirs might be worth something, so they or their descendants could sell them for money and they could recoup the cost that they
Yeah, but why would you
hunting Bonnie and Clyde?
I get it to a certain extent, but why would you want a weapon that took the life of somebody that's quote unquote like your brother and sister? Like, if I would never do that. I would never want that in my possession. I'd be like, no, fuck you.
It is very odd. It makes very
That is so weird.
Yeah, for sure. So at this point, obviously, the scene is overrun with onlookers and essentially like morbid tourists.
Please tell me that they did not leave her body alone with men. Like, please tell me that was not something that happened.
They tried to. There were some things that happened that I don't think were great, but that happened at the coroner's office.
Jesus.
So they managed to kind of keep the crowds at bay. The coroner at one point, I believe, if I remember correctly, had gone to the scene to sort of take stock and was like,
Yeah.
they died by
Which is
gunshot,
common.
which, I mean,
We do
obvious.
that
I feel like
today.
we don't
Yeah.
even need a coroner to tell us that. Yeah, and so they ended up towing the car through town. At this point,
Let's make a giant fucking spectacle
nearby.
about it. Heaven forbid that these are human beings that just lost their lives. Like, let's just make a whole goddamn parade.
Well, here's what bothers me the most is that they sat in the death car for 2 hours at the crime scene, being swarmed by people that treated them like objects, that stole their possessions, that were literally trying to cut the clothes from their body, cut their hair off so they could sell it. There were people cutting bullets from trees, trying to like take pieces of the car.
And we're pointing the finger at them, saying that they're shitbags, and yet the people that are pointing the finger at them saying like, oh, you guys are awful people are doing this. Like, do we not have self-control or self-reflection or like any sort of moral compass to guide us at all? Like, what is happening?
Well, that's why I find their story so intriguing, and when I bring this up online, I get a lot of hate because people will say, well, we're not responsible. I always say, who's the real monster in the story of Bonnie and Clyde? Them or us? Because we made a spectacle of their deaths. We treated them as less than dirt,
dude.
After they died.
No matter how you look at it, they did bad things. They were bad people. But like, you can't distance yourself and say, oh wow, we were the heroes in this story. We did so good. Like, given the context, like, we are just as fucked up as they were. Like, how is any of this appropriate or right? Like, you're supposed to be on the good side of history. If you want to be a good guy, you do the right things, whether somebody's alive or dead. You don't parade them around town and let people steal shit off of dead bodies. You're letting them desecrate corpses. Like, regardless of what they did, these are still people that have family members who love them and care about them. This is a tragedy to some people. Is it a tragedy to everybody? No. But you have to have some sort of sense and compassion to be like, wow, this matters to somebody, and think beyond yourself. Like, that is still someone's son and sister and brother. Like, were they bad people? Yes. I'm not going to argue that. I'm not going to say that they were angels and they did everything right. But at the end of the day, you cannot point the finger at them and then go and behave this way and say, oh, we were right. We're the good guys. You're not. You're not. You're just as bad.
So they towed the car to Arcadia, Louisiana, and the coroner's office there was essentially in the back of like a local hardware store. They didn't have an official coroner's office. It was sort of like a conglomeration. And so they take Bonnie and Clyde out of the car. They put them on gurneys. At this point, there was such a big crowd, they have to wheel them through the crowd. They take some photos of them being, wheeled through the crowd, which you can also find online, fully clothed. And then they get them inside to the coroner, and shout out to the coroner. This man is an MVP.
Finally. Finally.
People were trying to break the windows of the coroner's
What
office
the hell?
To see Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh my God.
And they, to the point where, and there were people swarming, to the point where the coroner was actually taking embalming fluid and spraying it at the crowds.
Hell yeah, dude. Fuck off, people. Oh, hell yeah. I love this guy.
And what's interesting, too, and I don't think it's this coroner, but Bonnie and Clyde had actually ended up kidnapping one of their coroners.
Oh, that's awkward.
Before they were killed. Yeah. So they had kidnapped a man who said, he was an undertaker, and Bonnie thought it was hysterical, and she laughed, and she said, well, when we die, can you take care of our bodies? And he was like, yeah, sure, if you let me live. And so he did actually honor his word to her.
Wow.
That he would help embalm
There's
their
a good
bodies.
guy right there. He got kidnapped, and he has more integrity than the rest of you fuckers. He literally gets kidnapped by them, and he still honors them and respects them even though they're dead. The rest of you guys have no goddamn excuse. Get out of here. Case closed.
So he was involved with, embalming their bodies and preparing them for their funerals. Now, this is the part I had highlighted or briefly mentioned that I have major issues with. So it took their families about 8 hours to get there.
Which makes sense.
Part of it was, I believe Clyde's brother LC was driving and he got turned around and, got
Me too,
lost.
dude.
So it took them a while to get there. Obviously, Bonnie and Clyde had sat in the car for 2 of those hours.
Mm-hmm.
By the time that their families got there, Bonnie and Clyde were still laying nude on gurneys covered in blood because the coroners could not do their job because the crowds would not leave them alone. And there was not a big enough police force to keep the
Well, the
crowds
police
at bay.
probably didn't care either because they're part of the problem.
Exactly. So that's always bothered me. The other thing is they had dry cleaning at like a dry cleaners in Louisiana, like different things. Somebody at the dry cleaner stole all that clothing because the family had called saying we want that, and they were
Dude,
like, we don't know where it is.
you can't
Somebody
even let
stole
them
Clyde-
dress their dead loved ones. Like, come on.
Somebody stole Clyde's stick pin from his tie. Somebody at the coroner's office had taken it. So again, all kinds of things were happening that weren't on the up and up. The thing that bothers me most is a photographer snuck into the coroner's office and took photos of Bonnie nude.
Fuck that guy.
And the following day, her dead body, she's covered in blood, nude, waist up, chest out. And the following day, the newspapers printed her nudes.
Oh my god.
Of her corpse.
Are you
On
shitting
the
me?
front page. No.
Are you
it happened.
shitting me? What the fuck? How did anybody think that this was okay?
It's insane.
That's
Truly.
like straight up like necrophilic shit right there. Like there's no
Oh, it's insane.
That's insane. Why would that's first of all, that's sharing somebody's nudes without their permission, but that's sharing a dead person's nudes when she's dead. That is a whole other
Exactly.
level of fucked up, and you're gonna put it in the goddamn newspaper? Do you guys have
just
any
deny her-
self-respect?
The sheer denial of like her dignity to do that.
And the fact that
It's
this is also in a time where it's like, oh, we're supposed to take care of women. Women, you know, like they're these subservient, like fragile things that can't do anything, and you're still gonna do that?
And one thing that, and again, it's the author in me, it's the fictionalist, novelist. I always think about how angry that would have made Clyde to know
Oh,
that somebody had done that.
can you
That
imagine?
man would have killed everyone involved.
And I wouldn't blame it, but can you imagine being her family and seeing that in the newspaper? Being like, oh my
yeah.
god, they just posted her naked dead body in the newspaper? Are you fucking kidding
Well,
me?
if I remember correctly, the way that Emma Parker found out that Bonnie was dead was because the newspapers called her for a statement
Jesus Christ. The police didn't even tell her?
about her daughter's death. She found out because they called to ask for an interview about what she thought about the death of her daughter. And at that point, she didn't even know she was dead.
That's
Yeah.
insane. This whole
It's
thing
insane.
is fucked up, dude. This whole thing is
It's
so
horrible.
fucked up.
So they finally embalmed their bodies, and it was very difficult to do because the sheer level of bullet holes
Well,
made
yeah.
it impossible for them to keep the embalming fluid in. And then when they did have the funerals, what's interesting, first of all, to me, is Bonnie had lots of talks with her mother about what her final wish was, what she wanted. And she had mentioned a couple things specifically. She did not want to go to an undertaker's or a coroner's office. She really didn't. She wanted to be taken to her family. She wanted to spend a final night just laid out in the parlor with her family. And her logic was it had been so long since she had a home to call her own. I get choked up talking about it. It had been so long since she had a home to call her own. She just wanted a final night with her family. To just be surrounded by her loved ones, to not be afraid, to not have to run, to just be with the people
And
she loved.
instead, she's getting
And
this.
because of the crowds, her mother could not honor that wish. There was no way for
Somebody
her to
probably
take her
would have-
daughter's body home.
Dude, they probably would have stolen it. Like, if we're being honest, they probably would have stolen her body. Like, ugh!
Exactly.
This whole thing
So-
makes me so
so-
mad. I'm so
Her
mad.
mother couldn't do that. So first of all, her mother wasn't able to honor that wish, which I think always bothered her that she
Yeah.
couldn't do that for Bonnie.
Well, that's her baby.
And then the other thing is when it came to the funeral, they ended up having separate funerals, and there were probably 90,000 people that attended Bonnie's.
Oh, come
60
on.
or 70,000, I think, that attended Clyde's. There were people outside selling Coca-Cola and hot dogs.
You know
like
damn
it was
well.
a spectacle.
Yeah, they did not actually give a shit about either Bonnie or Clyde. They were there to be there and be part of what was happening, and that was it. That was it. That was the only
Exactly.
reason.
And so they had two separate funerals, and I want to say Clyde's was like on a Friday and Bonnie's was like on a Saturday or something like that, like separated by a day. And with Clyde's, I think Elsie stood by the casket, like just because he wanted to be with his brother, and he wanted obviously to make sure nobody did anything.
Yeah.
So anyway, and then with Bonnie, what's interesting is her sister, and I had hinted at this last episode, Billy had been arrested, stupidly, by the cops in Texas because somebody had said that her and Raymond Hamilton were responsible for the Grapevine shooting. So she had been arrested because they thought she was the person that shot Holloway in the face. So,
okay.
And obviously she wasn't. She was cleared. She was not involved.
How did we get to that assumption? Like, what?
I literally wish I could tell you, but I have no clue. They just assumed is literally the only answer.
Let's go falsely arrest somebody. It can't get any worse.
So she attended her sister's funeral in chains under armed guard.
Okay, you know what? I'm surprised they even let her
Bonnie
go, if I'm being honest. I'm surprised they even let her show up.
Yeah. So she was in a little baby blue negligee, and then they had obviously reconstructed her face and tried to cover all of the bullet holes, but they had put a little white veil over her face. Her mother had, just because even with the
there's only so much you can do. Yeah.
Like herself. So when Billy approached the coffin or the casket, and she saw her sister, she actually fainted, and one of the guards caught her, and she started crying. But yeah, there were 90,000 people that attended Bonnie's funeral.
Dude, I wouldn't want those people there if I was
insane.
her. I'd be like, you all need to get the fuck out of here. Leave. Like, I don't want you here.
Insane. And then one of Bonnie's other final wishes, she always said to her mother she wanted to be buried with Clyde. Now, this is going to upset a few people. She was not buried with Clyde. A lot of people get very angry with her mother because her mother did not like Clyde. She never spoke ill about Clyde to Bonnie.
Right, but you can see where she's coming from a mother's point of view, because the only reason this happened is because, in a way, of Clyde. Because Bonnie fell in with Clyde. So, like, I get it from a mother's perspective.
And she supposedly had said to Bonnie that he had you in life, I'm not going to let him have you in death. Which I can understand that sentiment. And part of it is people blame her mother. Oh, she was just vindictive and she just hated Clyde. She couldn't get over her hate to honor her
honestly
wish. But I honestly think most of it was semantics, because remember, Clyde's family wanted him buried with Buck. They were buying a joint headstone.
Right, so it wasn't going to happen anyways.
They had already arranged that. It was Bonnie's mother told her, yes, I'll bury you with Clyde, probably because she just wanted her daughter to be happy.
Right.
But she already knew that it had been arranged for Clyde to be buried with Buck. They were never going to be buried together. Mm-hmm. In recent years, Bonnie's niece, Rhea Lynn Linder, I believe that's her name. She was named Bonnie, but she changed her name because she didn't want to be associated with her aunt.
Which is fair.
She has been trying to get them moved to the same cemetery so they can be buried together. What's interesting to me is Bonnie originally was buried by her niece and nephew, Billy's children, who had passed away when Bonnie was on the run with Clyde, and she was always very close with her with her niece and nephew. And there's a story in Fugitives that Emma tells about how there was this little crawdad song that Bonnie would sing to them, and so when the littlest one, I think her name was Jackie, when she was sad and she would cry, her older brother, he would say, Bonnie will be here soon and she'll sing you the crawdad song. And it would cheer her up and she'd get happy. And so Bonnie was devastated when they died. They both died from just, like a childhood illness.
Yeah.
But it broke my heart. I cried when I read Fugitives because I made the connection that her whole life she wanted children. She never had children of her own. But in death, she was buried by the two little babies that mattered the most to her in the whole world. And so then
she's taking care of those little babies too. Somewhere in the great beyond.
I don't feel so bad about her not being buried with Clyde when I remember that she was buried with them. And then later her mother was eventually buried with her. People have definitely been trying to move them together, especially because Bonnie's grave is very well kept. It's a nice cemetery. Clyde's has not been as well kept. It's not in as good of an area of town. Yeah. So people are trying to to do that. And then it's funny.
It feels wrong in my opinion to separate him from his brother though. That bothers me.
So too.
I also feel like Clyde wouldn't be upset with Bonnie for being buried with her family. No, I think he would understand.
I think he would understand.
I don't think he'd be upset at all. He'd be like, okay, I get it. I don't think...
She's with her family.
Honestly, I think he'd probably tell her, no. Get a hold of yourself, dude.
I feel like, too, I look at it from the perspective, because I do believe in heaven. And I think that, yes, their earthly bodies are separate. I don't think that their spirits are separate. I do think that they're together.
And obviously that's contingent on, what their belief system is. I don't know what that is.
Exactly. But they
But
were both Christian.
okay,
Or,
good.
they were both practicing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, I don't know. I think I said in part one how W.D. Jones always found it a little funny. Excuse me. W.D. Jones always found it a little funny that they would like say their prayers every night before bed, considering the life that they led. But
Hey,
I really do think that despite everything, that they are together.
the way I see it is
Um,
if Ted Bundy can find God in prison and he ends up going to heaven after killing people the way that he did, that's fine. It's not my job to understand it or condone it because I'm not God. That's God's thing. I'll let him handle that stuff. I can still hate him as a human being and be like, fuck you, you shouldn't be there, but I don't get that say. So, I could
exactly.
see Bonnie and Clyde being in heaven together. Like, I could totally see that being a thing. I kind of hope
Yep.
it is because I
I hope
feel
so
like
too.
it's fucked up if they try to, in my personal opinion, granted I'm not part of their family, I think it's a little messed up in my opinion to separate like Clyde from his brother and
Mm-hmm.
everything and then Bonnie from her family because they were both very family oriented. So it just, I don't know, it feels a little weird in my opinion.
Exactly. Well, and it was interesting. I read an article, and it was someone talking about how they went to like visit Bonnie's grave or whatever, and they called in advance, and the lady on the line said, "Oh, Bonnie has lots of visitors," and that made me smile that people still visit and lay flowers, and so yeah, so that was sort of afterwards, and then if we jump forward in time, just to give you a little closure on a few of the people involved, so you know what happened to them. Raymond Hamilton died via electric chair,
Oh, damn.
just a year or two following the death of Bonnie and Clyde.
Wow.
Henry Methvin, interestingly enough, I feel like this is the most hysterical thing in the world. All of his crimes in Texas were expunged, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot
But,
about that.
but, dumbass Henry Methvin, he did not just commit crimes in Texas, so Oklahoma knocked on his door.
Hell yeah, Oklahoma, let's go!
They were like, you committed crimes here too.
Hey,
We
buddy,
didn't make you a
don't
deal.
forget about me. Oh, that's great. I love
They were
that.
like, we did not cut you a deal.
God bless
So
Oklahoma.
we're not going to reward you. So he served some time for crimes that he had committed there. I
Nice.
think it was only like 8 or 9 years. Something
Justice.
Like that. Interestingly enough, and this is crazy because I don't think it was a coincidence, his father was hit and killed by a car.
Oh, damn.
They suspect
That's awkward.
they suspect foul play, but it was never proven. Because there were a lot of people that figured out that they were involved in betraying Bonnie and Clyde and weren't happy about it. Because the only thing worse than
Being a snitch.
criminal is being a rat.
Yeah,
On
don't
criminals.
be a snitch.
And then exactly. And
Snitches
then
get
what's even
stitches.
Crazier, and this feels it's horrible. It's a horrible way to die. This is a horrible way to die, but it also feels a little bit like karma in a weird way. So take it with a grain of salt. I'm not condoning it, but it's interesting.
Oh, no.
I believe it was 1948, 43, something like that. Henry Methvin got drunk, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know for sure. And fell asleep on rail, and that is how he died.
He fell asleep on
And
railroad
the irony
tracks?
of it to me, yeah, he was cut in half by a train on railroad tracks.
God damn!
And the interesting thing to me, and I think you'll find this interesting too, first of all, they suspected foul play, but second of all is this man betrayed Bonnie and Clyde, knowing that they would die violently, to escape the electric chair. He does all of this. He escapes the electric chair, and then he dies in an even worse way.
Because he gets hit
Because
by
to
a
me, being
fucking
cut
train.
in half by a train is even worse
Oh my
than
god.
dying by electric chair.
Dude, the conductor's just
So
like,
I
oh,
find
was
that
that a speed bump? Oh shit, my bad.
My bad. So anyway, that's interesting. And then W.D. Jones lived to be fairly old. I think he lived to maybe his early 60s.
Yay.
But again, yeah, you say yay, but he also didn't have a great death.
Oh,
All of
no.
these people had really horrible
I mean,
lives.
karma will get you.
He was killed. He took a girl home from a bar, and he was killed by her jilted ex-lover.
Oh, shit.
To death, I believe. or
Oh,
something, I can't
shit.
remember. So yeah, so that's how he died.
Well, damn.
Blanche Barrow served her sentence. Then she got out of jail. She did end up losing vision in one of her eyes. They weren't able to repair it. But she served her sentence. Honestly, the part that pisses me off the most is she served a longer sentence than Henry Methvin, even though she never killed anyone, and her only crime was just by being guilty of association.
That's because they hate women.
It really, truly is. Because she served like 10 years or something. So anyway, she gets out. She ends up remarrying, settling down. She has a nice life. There's some accounts that, because like Bonnie, she couldn't have children because she at one point had been married to a very abusive man. And I guess in old age, she had these dolls that she would kind of treat like her kids.
Oh.
But anyway, she wrote a memoir that she never published. She wrote it while she was in prison. And then after her death, somebody that was friends with her had found this memoir and sent it to a Texas historian and was like, hey, can we get this published? So he took the time to order it and make sense of it because it was all handwritten on lined paper.
Yeah.
And she had this thing where because her vision was so poor, she would mark her spot with her pencil. And so a lot of times it would look like there were lots of periods and sentences where they shouldn't be, but it's because she was marking where she was so she didn't get lost on the page. But yeah, so her memoir actually has been a very important cornerstone of the Bonnie and Clyde story and mythology because she offered insight into what it was actually like to be in the car with them
she was
on
there.
the road. Yeah, so she actually lived a very long life, and then I believe she died from cancer. And what's interesting is her and Bonnie's sister Billy became really, really close friends later in life.
That's good.
And I believe, Nell Barrow, she was friends with them as well. Marie had an interesting life. After Clyde's death, she fell in and out of a bunch of criminal gangs as like a girlfriend of people. She obviously divorced her first husband, who she always thought was a snitch. And then she ended up, this is so crazy. She ended up finally finding love when she was a little bit older. She married a man who was like an ex-con. But this man, this cracked me up. He made money by selling stolen lawnmowers.
Hell yeah, dude.
He supported them.
That's so funny. Oh, that's great.
It makes me think about all of her little tiny cons she would pull as a kid where she'd be like, give me money. So, like.
She was like, hey, you know what? He's matching my freak, dude. He's matching my freak.
Yeah. This lawnmower thief, that's the one for
That's
me.
so funny.
And then LC ended up, I think eventually he became a truck driver.
Okay.
But he really struggled with alcohol and drug abuse after the death of Clyde.
Yeah.
He never got over the loss of his brother, and like just mentioning Clyde would make him cry.
Oh.
And
poor baby.
He had a really kind of rough life, but ended up getting it together. And
That's good.
Later in life,
That's
led
good.
a good life. And then Clyde's oldest brother, who he was never super close with, Jack Elvin, he actually ended up, he lived a really straight and narrow life, and then like kind of middle age got in a brawl at a bar and ended up killing a man.
Oh shit.
For it. There were very few members of the Barrow family that did not have a mugshot or were not in prison at some point, because following the death of Bonnie and Clyde, most of the members of the Parker and Barrow families were arrested and mugshotted and fingerprinted because there was a harboring trial for all of the people that were guilty for harboring Bonnie and Clyde. The funniest person that they included, in my opinion, was first of all Marie, because the girl was like 16. What the fuck is she gonna do? Like,
she's like, dude, I live here. What do you want from me? Like, this is my house. I'm a minor. She's like, I'm a minor. Hello.
I'm a teenager. So I think that's funny, but you should look up her mugshot. It's actually kind of fierce. She was a looker. And then it's interesting, they included Mary O'Dare, who, if you remember...
Oh, yeah, that random-ass lady that Bonnie didn't like.
Kicked out. I can't get over the fact, the irony, that she was kicked out of the Barrow gang because they didn't like her. And now she's being accused of harboring them. And I can just imagine this woman getting up on the stand and being like, why would I harbor them?
I hate them, and they hate me. How does this make sense? The math is not mathing.
But what's funny is I do believe she ended up serving some time for harboring them, and I'm like, this
wow,
woman hated them. How funny.
Jesus.
But yeah, so there's very few members of the Parker and Barrow family that led good lives following the death of Bonnie and Clyde, and I think it's important. Most people end the story with the death of Bonnie and Clyde, but I think it's important to remember how many lives
were
their
affected.
Lives touched.
Yeah.
How many people were negatively infected or affected by this, because that's not even discussing the families of all of the victims who now had to try and pull their lives back together with the loss of a father, a brother, you know.
I mean, you just think of like Holloway, you know, like his wife's affected by that, his family's affected by that. Like, it's crazy to think how many people on the fringes of what happened end up getting like screwed over and everything.
Exactly. So I always feel like that's an important thing not to overlook when you talk about Bonnie and Clyde. But just my last point before we wrap up is, often when I discuss the life and death of Bonnie and Clyde, I describe it as a tragedy because to me it is a tragedy for everyone
And
involved.
I'd
There is
agree.
not one person that came out of this unscathed. Even the officers involved,
I
a
agree.
lot of them struggled with drinking and with PTSD,
Well,
even though they
yeah.
didn't have the terminology to
I
label it that.
I would too, especially if I'm doing something that later I'm like, "Oh shit, that was wrong. I probably shouldn't have done that." Like, how do you
A
grapple with
lot of
that?
them really struggled specifically with the death of Bonnie. There were
Yeah.
a few that really felt guilty about that. And so they struggled. Obviously, Bonnie and Clyde's family suffered. The families of the victims suffered. Obviously, we can't forget the victims. They lost their lives. And the thing is, there are very few heroes in this story. I feel that everyone is sort of an anti-hero.
Yeah.
Everyone's flawed. Everyone made mistakes. Even the good
At
guys
the
made
end of the day,
mistakes.
everybody's human, and
Yes.
that's the complexity of this whole story and what makes it so tragic is like just about, and obviously there's some exceptions, but just about everybody involved made really poor negative choices that led to what happened. Like it wasn't just
Yes.
one moment, it was consecutive poor choices by grown adults that caused so many people to be harmed by the entire situation, whether that's Bonnie and Clyde or the officers involved. And to be honest, they're lucky more people weren't damaged by this.
Exactly. So yeah, so I always want to, when I call it a tragedy, I get a lot of hate online. It's not a tragedy. It's glorious that they died. Justice was served. I firmly believe a lot of times justice can be tragic, depending on who's the one delivering the justice and how deserved it actually is. So I will continue to call it a tragedy. I think
Yeah.
that it is. If we're
I
gonna
would
call
say you're
Romeo and
justified
Juliet
in
a
that.
tragedy,
Oh
yeah,
God,
I
you know
feel
how I
like
feel about
Bonnie and
Romeo
Clyde.
and Juliet. I hate that. I
Yeah.
hate Shakespeare, guys. Shakespeare pisses me off. Anyways, he's not part of our
Um,
discussion. I
but
just need
yeah,
to make that
and
known.
so yeah, so anyway, and I'm writing a novel about their lives and deaths, and it's funny
And
because
she's very
a lot
good
of
at
people,
writing, so I'm excited for
thanks,
that.
I'm trying. A lot of people will say, well, you better talk about the victims, and I'm like, of course I'm gonna
Why
talk about the
wouldn't I,
victims.
dude? It's not. It's almost like
Yeah,
they're part of the story, bro. Like they're
exactly.
part of why
But
it
yeah,
is a
so
tragedy.
hopefully, eventually, I'll be able to pull all that together, and someone can read it and
I
enjoy it,
believe in
and
you.
yeah, and I really, reach out online for to me or Emily if you have questions because I love to discuss everything to do
I
with your
don't.
case. I
I'm
find it
just kidding.
fascinating.
I'm just kidding.
She's like, please don't reach out to me.
Actually,
I'll
I
talk
was
to you
held at
anything.
gunpoint. We're actually in the same house. She doesn't live in California. She's actually under my desk right now, and I'm scared for my life. I didn't want to be here
Same
the
thing.
entire time.
I was holding her hostage, Bonnie and Clyde style. I was like, I'm gonna kidnap you and drive you down the road, give you
Yeah,
phone
and then I'll
calls.
be like, "Hey, have fun going to a cell phone."
Yeah, exactly. Walk back.
Oh,
Oh,
goodness
goodness.
gracious. Well, thank you for sitting down. I know it was a bit of a clusterfuck recording this just between our pets and then Wi Fi issues and tech issues, but I'm glad we got it done. I think there's definitely some good bits in here, and, sometimes, uh, you got to sacrifice a little bit of quality for a good story and things like that. So
I
I
think
hope people like it.
fitting. It's fitting that it's a clusterfuck because Bonnie and Clyde's entire criminal career was a clusterfuck.
To be
So we're just
honest,
staying true to theme.
their whole story is a clusterfuck. So really, it's just fitting the theme. But yes, thank you for making time for me and sitting down. I actually feel a lot more engaged with them and their story than I did because, like, honestly, I knew jack shit about Bonnie and Clyde other than like their names, and then they're the reason the FBI happened and everything. So it's good to know a good chunk of like American history that otherwise I didn't pay attention to because growing up I was all about like Greek mythology and pirates and things like that, so I never bothered with things like Bonnie and Clyde and everything. So it's I feel informed, and a little more well-rounded and sympathetic and empathetic, and I feel like there's a lot more gray to the story than what I originally perceived. So I appreciate you bestowing me with some divine knowledge, if you will.
And I appreciate being able to bestow it.
Well, I'm sure you do. Do you? I have to shit on you because you're my sister and I love you. But where can people find you? Where can they locate you?
Oh, everywhere.
She's
No,
in the shadows.
I'm in the shadows lurking. No, I can be reached through my Instagram and TikTok, which is Wicked Women Author. I'm the author of a poetry collection about wicked women in history, and one of the poems is written from the perspective of Bonnie Parker. But I discuss women all throughout history, and I often discuss the intersectionality between, patriarchy and feminism in history and how it influences the way we view women and whether they were actually wicked or whether it just benefits the patriarchy to paint them that way. So anyway, you can find all that content plus a little sprinkle of vampires because I'm obsessed.
Yeah.
And some makeup and cosplay on all of those accounts. But yeah, and I talk often about Bonnie and Clyde, so feel free to DM me, shoot me a message. I love to reply. If you have a question, you can always comment on a video, and I pretty much always get back to people. So yeah.
Cool. You can find me and this podcast on Apple Music, Amazon Music, and Spotify, and now YouTube. If you haven't noticed, I do have a YouTube channel. It's called Psyched Out. Shocker, it shares the same name. And I posted a video for the last podcast episode on the Osage Indian murders. That shit's a wild ride. Also, the government was like hella racist in that video. You can also find me on TikTok under official.psychedout.podcast, I believe, and I think it's the same on Instagram as well. So if you want to stay tuned on the things that I post and updates on what episodes will be coming out, that is where you need to go, ladies and gentlemen. But I don't think I have anything else. Is there anything else you want to share with the peoples?
No, I just want to say thanks for coming along for this ride and for being interested in learning more about the Public Enemy era.
Yeah, it's very entertaining. I'm a little curious about like what other people were involved, so maybe I'll get you on for another episode in the future of some other little weirdos in the
Talk
Public
about
Enemy.
John Dillinger or Al Capone.
There you
Yeah.
go. There you go.
There you go.
Well, thank you guys for listening/watching if you're over on the YouTube side of things. As always, stay safe, stay diligent, and stay psyched out.